just called to say I'll kill you. I just called to hear how much I scared. I just called to say I'll kill you. And I'm screaming while I'm tearing you apart. I just called to say I'll kill you. I just called to hear how much I'm scaring you. I just called to say I'll kill you. And I'm screaming while I'm tearing you apart. Tearing you apart. Tearing you apart.
Hail there, legends! All hail the adventurers! Or is it the other way around? Hello and welcome. I wanted to say thank you for being here. Thank you for putting up with my... I had a little bit of a delay today. My OBS was not working correctly. So I had to do some other extra maintenance work. But anyways, if you're brand new to the stream, this is where I conduct an art stream where I draw something from start to finish before your eyes. We look at some entertainment on the side while we do that. And at the end of the art stream, what we do is we add a bunch of names to the wheel, and we spin the wheel until we get down to a final winner, and that final winner gets to get the artwork, provided they claim it, of course. Basically, how do you get on the wheel? Well, just be here and chat. Be here and chat. When I give out the secret word, you enter that secret word into the chat, and guess what? You're entered into the wheel. If you can't be here for it, you can be subbed on Twitch, DLive, and Kick. That will get you your name on the wheel. Or you can go up to Patreon as well and get even more chances to win. A lot of bonuses there. I can actually kind of say over half the wheel right now are people from Patreon. So I want to say a big, big heart to you guys. Thank you guys for helping me and supporting the arts and all that stuff. I want to welcome you guys all to the stream. We're going to be doing Ghostface today. And it's going to be a little tribute to Scream, basically. Oh, man. Should be a lot of fun. So what we're also going to do is I'm going to do for the wheel, there's going to be a little bit of horror movie trivia with the wheel and stuff like that. So hopefully you guys have been studying well over the Halloween, buffing yourselves up on some horror movie trivia. Should be a lot of fun. Should be a lot of... All right, so without further ado, we're going to get into this. I'm going to put on some entertainment, or I should say edutainment, for you guys. There we go. Also, let me know if the sound is okay, if I need to turn it up or not. I tend to be quite loud.
One thing, surviving them is another.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie.
You can never have sex. You can never drink or do drugs. Never, ever, ever. Say it.
I'll be right back.
Then along came a film that surprised Hollywood
Volume's good?
and
Okay.
audiences by daring to defy them all.
There's a formula to it. A very simple formula.
We took every single rule and broke it.
And introduced moviegoers to a new kind of horror movie.
You're starting to sound like some Wes Carpenter flick or something.
I think what makes the Scream films original is the fact that they take a look at themselves and they take a look at the horror genre itself. And I think that was a very new concept.
It was very, very acutely aware of the genre and kind of slyly announcing to the audience of, we know what you're thinking, and you better hang on to your seats because we're going to do something different.
It was a film that leaned on humor, but still managed to scare the hell out of audience.
We're going to go over boundaries that you didn't think we'd go over, and not just in gore.
It's not just a scary guy with a knife. It's not knowing who that person is.
No one had seen anything like that.
This scary movie also attracted a hot young cast of up-and-comers.
Everybody wanted to be in this movie. The fact that all these actors were just people I respected.
And on December 20th, 1996, an unsuspecting holiday audience was taken by the throat.
I didn't realize how scary the movie was going to be for people. Oh, I think this is probably going to work better than we expected.
But with a screen.
Hey, James. Yeah, I hope everyone had a good Halloween.
Worst timing in the world. Horror was done.
A brand name director who kept saying
A lot of fireworks.
I think the reason that I passed on it was my usual stupidity.
And a
Hey,
bitter
Danielle.
over
Good to see you.
a key filming location which divided an entire town.
The local papers were actually attacking the production.
I should remember to, if you're on YouTube, if you can hit that like button for me, that really helps out the channel a lot. Thank you.
When I wrote it, I couldn't pay my bills, and my car payment was due, and I was 3 months behind on my rent.
Wes was really under the gun from the studio because they didn't see it. And in Hollywood parlance, that means you're about to be fired.
You know, early on, we got an NC-17 rating.
Is this going to be the nail in some people's careers, you know, in their career coffin?
This is the story of an unproven screenwriter, a director in need of a hit, and a maverick studio that reinvented the rules of horror and made scary movies fun again. This is Inside Story, Scream.
I'm getting ready to watch a video.
Really? What?
Oh, just some scary movie.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
By the mid-1990s, the infamous Unabomber was finally captured. Moviegoers flocked to Independence Day. Television's hottest shows were ER and Seinfeld. Everyone was doing the Macarena, and kids everywhere were playing with Tickle Me Elmo. But on December 20th, 1996, the horror movie Scream was released to film audiences ready for a new kind of terror.
The Scream movie is something totally different. It was a movie that hit at the right time culturally. It recognized the pop icons of the past and then brought them into the fold in a way that was so uniquely entertaining.
Those past genre icons, films such as Black Christmas, When a Stranger Calls, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and A Nightmare on Elm Street, were the spiritual fathers of Scream, a movie that would pay homage to them as much as it would break new ground.
It's about a group of teenagers being terrorized and murdered. But what made it unique was that it was a satire on those films.
This scary movie tells the story of a seemingly typical teenage girl coming of age. She's surrounded by a close group of friends. She has a boyfriend.
I think I want to do
raging
the hood
hormones,
this way.
a father whose life is one business trip after another.
Have a good trip, Kay.
But Sydney Prescott's life is anything but ordinary as she tries to come to terms with the brutal murder of her mother 1 year ago.
Only a year ago, Maureen Prescott, wife and mother, was found raped and murdered not far from this peaceful town square.
And just when things seem to be getting back to normal, the quiet town of Woodsboro is once again plagued by a killer. Someone targeting Sydney. Someone who is taking their love of scary movies one step too far.
It's totally different, you know what I mean? And it's like, who knows what can happen?
But there was more to this slasher movie than its cast being stalked by yet another masked murderer.
I would describe Scream to a friend as a high school romp gone very, very wrong.
Scream was so brilliant and so smart and funny, but it took the deaths and the scares very seriously.
You have this group of kids talking about the killings, and the quiet one, you know, Neve Campbell's character, Sydney Prescott, you don't know much about her at all. And then you see that she's tied into it all because there was a murder of her mother earlier on, and this guy, Cotton Weary, is accused of it.
You know, if I was wrong about Cotton Weary, then the killer's still out there.
I think it was never been done before where there was a plot that was very intricate, very entangled with, you know, hidden secrets.
One of the most successful elements of the movie is the mystery element, and Scream taps into that. It taps into it beautifully.
You were constantly guessing about who the killer could be. It could have been anyone.
Killer's still on the loose, isn't he?
Come on, Sid.
Those murders are related.
I think Sydney's past is coming back to haunt her, obviously because of the murder of her mother. and having to deal with that and having to overcome that.
That kept it very grounded in something we all can really attach our emotions to.
I feel like she's lived, she's been hurt, she's seen life.
Your mother's murder was last year's hottest court case. Somebody was gonna write a book about it.
Right, and it had to be you with all your lies and bullshit theories.
With a new, hip, and more modern sensibility, Scream set itself apart from slasher movies of the past.
It was finally the movie where the characters had seen other movies.
Terror Train, Prom Night. How come Jamie Lee Curtis is in all of these movies?
I mean, it was basically saying, hey, you know what? We've seen all these movies. We know what's up.
And we're gonna spell it out. We're gonna say what everyone's been thinking. And now from this point forward, this is how horror movies are going to work.
Oh, you want to play Psycho Killer? Can I?
Oh, where's my ruler?
Like many horror movies, Scream would open on a dark night.
Where's my
a young
ruler?
girl alone in her isolated house, but her solitude would quickly be
screw it.
shattered by a mysterious phone call.
I'll make a makeshift ruler.
Yes?
Who is this?
Who are you trying to reach?
That quickly turned into a terrifying game.
Listen, you little bitch. You hang up on me again, I'll gut you like a fish, understand?
People thought, well, Drew Barrymore is gonna be in the whole film.
The fact that it's Drew Barrymore and she dies, it just tells you your preconceptions about this kind of movie are wrong.
But there would be other potential victims, starting with Sydney's friends, who offered a unique but cynical view of teenage life in the 90s.
Part of the brilliance of the script was the way the characters spoke to each other.
There is kind of a numbness to violence that obviously we're more excited by what's going on than horrified by what's going on.
No way. And we're not just talking killed, we're talking splattered movie killed. Ripped open from end to end.
These kids were a little too smart for their own good and wanting to see how far they could push it and what they could get away with.
The first among them is Sydney's boyfriend, Billy, who despite his surface charms, would be the first of the film's many suspects.
Do you wish to get out of the right to remain silent? Do anything.
He's charming and he's mysterious and he's, there's just a lot to him.
Billy is a really interesting
There we
character.
go. Okay.
Because there is something wrong with him. He's cool and he's good looking, so he gets a pass, which happens in real life.
Couldn't have been me, I was in jail. Remember?
Sydney's best friend and constant companion, Tatum Riley.
I made her really wide-eyed and just
Can't
fun.
believe there's been 6 of these films.
Kind of a great little effervescent being.
Tatum's boyfriend and
Clearly it made a lot of money.
Stu Macher.
I had this, this kind of crazy youth and this energy and was fearless, and I just kind of was bouncing off the wall. I look back at that performance, I'm like, what was he letting me do?
Hey, Icelander. Backup's doing good. He's doing good.
Randy Meeks, the quintessential geek who couldn't get the girl, but knew more than a thing or two about the inner workings of a horror movie.
If they watch Prom Night, they'd save time.
Okay, we know everything that's gonna happen in horror movies, and so, my character was the one that actually helped say that. It was like kind of the voice of the people.
The Randy character is one of the most original characters in the script, the kid who knows the rules. It's a brilliant idea, and it's part of what made the movie so fresh, because Randy is a real kid.
The film was more than young people in jeopardy. It also featured a host of adult characters, starting with the boyish and bumbling deputy of Woodsboro, Dewey Riley.
Does the force require you to work out?
No, ma'am. Because of my boyish good looks, muscle mass has increased my acceptance as a serious police officer.
I had different, traits and characteristics that I thought I could bring like a real sweet element to Dewey, and he's a loving character. He's still a little kind of kid inside.
It's very strange to see this sort of aw shucks guy in a world where, all these kids are so smart and wily, and yet you've got this sort of, Barney Fife wandering around, which is tremendously entertaining.
Opposite Deputy Dewey was hyper-aggressive reporter Gail Weathers, who would stop at nothing to get what she wanted.
Hi, Gail Weathers, reporting live from the Woodsboro Police Station. Wish to get a glimpse of Sydney Prescott.
Hey, watch her, Larry.
Hey, watch the hand! You know what you're dealing with here?
The character, Gail Weathers, is just a classic tabloid journalist bitch.
And no one felt Gail's sting more than her cameraman and resident flunky, Kenny Jones.
He was Gail's chief whipping boy. You know, that shit rolls downhill, and she was at the apex of the hill, and he was at the bottom.
And finally, keeping a watchful eye on his students was the morally upright but slightly unhinged Principal Himbry.
You make me so sick. Your entire havoc-inducing, thieving, whoring generation disgusts me.
Yeah, Principal Himbry and Sheriff Burke are the only real present adults. The mother is dead, and the father is going off on a business trip, and there's really doesn't seem to be too many other parents around.
I would imagine that the reason that her father is saying that he wants to leave town is to use the character as a red herring.
Have you located Sydney's father yet?
Yeah.
Well, he's not a suspect, is he?
We haven't ruled him out as a possibility.
Even with its cast of colorful characters and would-be suspects, and its knack for turning every cliche on its head, the question remained, could the horror movie make a comeback?
But the horror genre was not really in vogue at that moment.
They were seen as funny, they weren't so scary anymore, so people weren't really making them.
I mean, horror was dead.
Dead or not, one devoted horror movie fan decided it was time to take a gamble and write something that would defy expectations and break new ground.
I was trying to create something new and different that we haven't seen before. I wanted it to sort of just be perverse and very sort of satirical, but very real.
The resulting screenplay, originally titled Scary Movie, was indeed satirical, but its inspiration came from an event that was grisly, shocking, and most disturbing.
Oh, is this one that was loosely based on a real true story as well?
Scary night, isn't it? With the murders and all, it's like right out of a horror movie or something.
By the mid-1990s, audiences had grown tired of the played-out formula of typical teen horror movies, popularized by lackluster sequels and inferior imitators. When even previously unstoppable horror icons such as Michael Myers, Jason Voorhees, and Freddy Krueger failed to deliver even modest box office returns, it seemed as if
Well, they were also made super fast.
into obscurity.
Horror movies are a very specific genre.
Like there were a lot of them that were
And they
rush
tend to
productions.
go in cycles of what's being done at any given time. In the 80s, there was the slasher, and the slasher picture really became the kind of horror movie. Starting with Halloween, and then you had your Friday the 13th, your Nightmare on Elm Streets, and then House on Sorority Row, and all those kinds of movies. Those movies had kind of played themselves out. The lead characters, the killers, were kind of being seen as a joke. They were seen as funny. They weren't so scary anymore.
I'll get you, my pretty, and your little soul too.
Maybe just that it was at a time when the horror genre was not doing very well.
So people weren't really making them.
No one was doing it.
By the mid-90s, the horror genre was truly dead.
It seemed as though the film industry and audiences were prepared to let the typical stalk and slash horror film rest in peace. Against this backdrop, one devout fan of the genre, 25-year-old Kevin Williamson, was desperately seeking to gain a foothold in the film business.
Kevin had been kind of in town working at, relatively minor writing jobs.
This was sort of the beginning of his career. He hadn't written a lot of things before this.
After struggling to find work as an actor in New York City, Kevin Williamson's first attempt at crafting a screenplay came after making the move to Hollywood in 1991. But it would take 4 long years before Williamson would get his first break as a writer.
I read Kevin's very first script, Killing Mrs. Tingle, which I just thought was remarkable. Great characters, amazing dialogue. He really had a gift.
Although Killing Mrs. Tingle sold to independent production company Interscope Communications, it languished in development hell, leaving Williamson to wonder if the film would ever be produced. Because of this, he found himself struggling once again to find work in the highly competitive trenches of Hollywood.
We were looking to find him a job off of the sale of Killing Mrs. Tingle, and the horror franchises that had led up to that moment had all kind of petered out. They were all kind of fading away. So it wasn't exactly the sexiest thing to be out looking for a horror job. So in truth, we were having a hard time finding Kevin a great gig.
To make ends meet, Kevin Williamson took a job house-sitting for a friend. It was this decision and his financially desperate situation that put him at the right place at the right time, allowing him to catch a news program about a very disturbing subject.
He was house sitting, and he was watching a TV special about real murders and kind of started scaring himself as he was watching it.
Williamson had a right to be scared as he sat alone in the quiet house, watching the very real story of an infamous Florida serial killer. A tale so terrifying and so unbelievable, it seemed like something right out of a scary movie. Between November 1989 and August 1990, Danny Rolling murdered 5 students in Gainesville, Florida. Local media dubbed him the Gainesville Ripper.
Her body was also posed and her head was left on a shelf, as though to shock whomever walked into the scene.
Memory serves, I think
The apartments and dormitories
there was a bidding war for this film. I'm not mistaken from studios.
sexually assaulting and mutilating his victims, posing them grotesquely to highlight the chaos and carnage he had caused.
The case had finally come together, and on November 15, 1991, Danny Rolling was indicted to stand trial as the Gainesville Killer.
The horrifying true story of the Gainesville Ripper was an eerie reminder to Williamson of his favorite fright film, Halloween, a bona fide genre classic. The tale of unstoppable killer Michael Myers had terrified Williamson as a 12-year-old child, as much as it had inspired him.
The great thing about Kevin is he'd seen every horror movie, and for him, Halloween was the seminal movie.
You know, he loves Halloween.
Guys, I'll be right back. My wrist is starting to hurt a little bit.
A friend, I guess, to kind of
I'm gonna go put on my wrist brace. I'll be right back.
talking about scary
Enjoy.
movies and what's your favorite scary movie and all that.
What's your favorite scary movie?
I don't know.
You have to have a favorite. What comes to mind?
Halloween. You know, the one with the guy in the white mask who walks around and stalks babysitters?
And that was the genesis of what eventually became Scream.
From that one frightening night, an idea for a new kind of horror movie was born. One that would rely on the conventions of the horror movies Williamson had loved as a boy. The story came to him quickly.
And I went off to the desert for 3 days and locked myself in a room and I pounded it out.
Literally went to Palm Springs and wrote the script for a scary movie, which is remarkable.
I thought someone else is going to come along and make a scary movie or make a teenage movie, and I'm going to, and I'm going to have missed my chance.
And there was another.
Okay, I'm back. Hello, everyone. I've got my wrist brace on now.
I was desperate when I wrote it. I couldn't pay my bills, and my car payment was due, and I was 3 months behind on my rent.
And he just let himself go and write it.
Okay.
He saw it, and I think that's always the key to a really great script.
Williamson took a gamble by crafting a screenplay that blended the cliches of his favorite horror movies with his own brand of dark humor. But would Hollywood respond to a scary movie that dared to mix in a healthy dose of comedy with its terror?
Do you like scary movies, Sydney?
In 1994, Kevin Williamson, a struggling actor turned screenwriter, conceived of a brand new idea for a horror film that would turn every genre cliche on its head. But even lifelong horror fan Williamson wasn't sure what Hollywood's reaction would be to his unconventional script.
He was so nervous when he gave it to us because he thought for sure we were just gonna, think that it was a dreadful idea and that it was the worst timing in the world.
But Williamson's innovative concept paid off. The script he was hoping would turn his life around was an immediate hit with those who read it.
When I read the script, I thought it was brilliant. I think it was, you get a lot of scripts and they can take forever to read because they're dull or not interesting, not original. And with Scream, it was a real page turner.
And it was perfect. It was perfectly written.
Right off the bat, it was really terrifying.
It was so out of the blue, so unexpected to receive a script that good.
Yeah, one of the things I loved about it when I first read it was its self-awareness.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason! Jason!
I'm sorry. That's the wrong answer.
No, it's not! No, it's not! It was Jason!
But at the same time, there was a real humorous element. It didn't take itself too seriously.
Then you should know Jason's mother, Mrs. Voorhees, was the original killer. Jason didn't show up until the sequel.
I really wrote the script for the read because I wanted to sell it. I wanted people in Hollywood to go, oh, this is some cool dialogue. There's some cool characters. These are some cool plot twists.
And it wasn't long before Hollywood responded.
In terms of devising a strategy, we chose the smartest and best producers we could think of that could help to strengthen the project and going into financiers.
By the end of the day, there was 4 or 5 people bidding on it. Everyone else had called and said, we like it, we're gonna buy it, but we hadn't heard from Miramax yet.
Williamson and his agents were hoping for a call from the boldest brothers of independent film, Bob and Harvey Weinstein, whose studio, Miramax Films, had already blazed a Hollywood trail with a string of Oscar-winning films, such as Pulp Fiction, The English Patient, and Sling Blade. As luck would have it, Bob Weinstein had recently begun a new upstart division that would focus solely on genre fare. He called his sister company, which had already acquired the rights to the Hellraiser and Halloween franchises, Dimension Films.
I had told the people that were working for me the kind of movie that I was looking for, something that would be different than just the rest. And I had an assistant named Richard Potter. And I remember one day calling me up and says, I think I just read the script that you described.
I called him and I said, Bob, I just read a script. If you don't want to make this movie, then I don't know what you're looking for. So he laughed and said, well, I guess I better read it then.
And I read it and I loved it and I bid for it.
But with other major suitors such as Paramount, Universal, and Morgan Creek already circling the script, Dimension Films knew they had to get in the game fast. As the days went on, a bidding war drove the script's price higher and higher, and as the stakes rose, previously interested parties dropped out until only 2 players were left standing.
The 2 production entities that emerged as the most competitive were Kerry Woods and Kathy Conrad on one side, and Dan Halstead and Oliver Stone on the other side.
Surprisingly, the writer and director of high-profile films such as Platoon, Wall Street, and JFK had also decided he wanted to scoop up the hottest spec script in town. But it happened to be at a time when Williamson got the call he was waiting for.
The next morning, it was like 9 o'clock in the
Killer
morning,
content.
we got a call from Miramax. It's saying, okay, Bob read it, he loved it, he wants to buy it. How much?
How much would become an important question when it came time to decide which buyer would ultimately make Scary Movie.
There is a bidding war that when our offer comes in, it is not as high as some of the other offers.
And the decision to accept one of those offers could only come from Kevin Williamson.
Bob understood it. Bob loved the genre. I mean, Halloween was one of his favorite movies. It was one of my favorite movies. We bonded instantly.
He's like the Quentin Tarantino of like filmology when it comes to.
Do I want to put a layer of paint down for the mask, maybe? First to build on top of it?
Spec script in town, Dimension
That might be
Films solidified
better.
their future as a major player in the world of genre movies. It also
Just don't want it
changed
to get
Kevin
too thick.
Williamson's life forever, with
You
an
know what?
initial check for
Sorry.
$400,000
I'm talking out loud.
the start of a career which would make him the new voice of a generation.
Kevin
Thinking out loud.
really had his finger on
Eli
the pulse
Roth!
of the modern American teenager.
I'm gonna swing by the video store. I was thinking Tom Cruise and all the right moves. You know, if you pause it just right, you can see his penis.
Let me try and do some. Let me try and do some.
She brought a lot of the modern pop culture thing into it, and then obviously.
Hey,
the
puppies, how
Henry
you doing?
character, the
Welcome.
Matthew Lillard character, the whole. She's a very savvy.
I'm gonna take some white ink.
Dialogue in
Oh man, all these brushes are trash.
it just felt
Hair sticking out everywhere.
beyond real. You know, it felt like these kids were so.
Nothing worse than stray hairs on a brush.
The fact that that was written and the fact that they were aware of horror movies.
What movie is this from? I spit on your garage.
Okay.
I'm watching television.
I'm gonna bring
The Exorcist was on.
What's that werewolf movie with E.T.'s mom in it?
The Howling, horror, straight ahead.
Having officially made his entrance as a legitimate Hollywood player, everyone was buzzing about the hottest new screenwriter in town. A man who had found a niche that had been missing from the cinematic landscape for over a decade. A movie about teenagers and high school life that felt real, timely, and generation specific.
He took the John Hughes formula and the slasher formula and made it feel modern and contemporary.
And the film itself definitely was sort of hip and focused towards a younger generation.
Definitely felt like a John Hughes movie gone to hell.
Those kids in the John Hughes movies felt like modern, contemporary kids.
Nothing could shock me anymore. Last night at the dance, my little brother paid $1 to see your underwear.
Oh, really, Alicia?
As if.
Come on, Sporto. Level with me. Do you slip her the hot beef injection?
Breasts. I want to see Jamie Lee's breasts. When do we see Jamie Lee's breasts?
And I think perhaps Scream became similar to one of those films.
Kevin just has very literate characters who are talking about everything that's going on, and I think that's what made the script so appealing.
She wants to kill herself, but she realizes that teen suicide is out this year,
And homicide is a much healthier therapeutic expression.
Okay.
Where do you get this shit? Ricky Lake. Oh, you are pathetic.
Kevin is the only one who can do that dialogue, and you believe it.
Kevin really thought through everything. He really understood the structure and mythology of slasher films and red herring movies and just applied the John Hughes modern teenager to it.
With a fresh take on an old genre, Dimension Films was ready to find a director for their horror hybrid. However, it began to seem as if Scary Movie would never get made when nearly every bankable horror director in town said no.
We know you're not the killer. Huh?
Kevin Williamson's Scary Movie was a script that took Hollywood by storm, putting the hot young writer on the fast track to success. But the production faced a major hurdle, finding a director who could successfully blend the satirical elements of the screenplay with spine-tingling horror.
And the first person that came into our minds was Wes Craven. I mean, when you think about the first Nightmare on Elm Street, if that's the only movie you watch.
Yeah, Wes Craven said no first, didn't he?
Scare you.
Why West Way's the best there is. So I figured if we're going to make our first Dimension movie, why not go with the best?
He was not interested in doing this, which was a huge disappointment.
I passed, and I passed for quite a while.
I know they had approached George Romero and Sam Raimi and, you know, kind of like the staples of the horror world.
There's always another list of directors, but you'd stare at that list and start crying.
I feel like we were
Nobody wanted to touch it because horror movies were not making money.
to do it.
Wes wanted to do other things, and it was a conversation as to whether or not he would go back and do horror.
I understand it. He didn't want to do, quote, another slasher movie.
With the talent pool shrinking fast, the studio behind the project, Dimension Films, continued to hope that their director of choice would change his mind.
Wes Craven has influenced horror in the 70s with Last House on the Left, in the 80s with Nightmare on Elm Street. You cannot overstate how incredibly influential Wes Craven has been to the horror genre and has continually made movies for different generations that felt so contemporary.
Craven's previous work, at times critically lauded, often shocking, but always provocative, reached mainstream success with 1984's A Nightmare on Elm Street. In it, he created one of the most iconic figures.
Okay, I've got a base layer underneath. I'm going to build on top of this.
Wes became horror master.
We'll add dimension to the mask, don't worry.
Slasher director Wes Craven, and I became horror star, slasher star Robert Englund. You know,
My light source is going to come from here.
Name for a while.
Before long, Craven found himself firmly enmeshed in the world of horror movies, a place where he could use his talent at evoking blood-chilling terror to maximum effect.
I read an interview with Wes once somewhere where he said, within the realm of horror movies, you can do anything you want. You can explore any issue you want. You just have to have a jump out and grab you every 10 minutes.
I think people would imagine, because of the films that he makes, that he would be really twisted in some way. Of course, he is in some way. But he's also just a really, really wonderful, really calm, a great director, a great leader, and people love to work with him.
When you meet Wes, it's pretty shocking because you expect someone who's like a little creepier, and he's so intelligent and soft-spoken and just kind, because you're like, wow, you know, what's going on behind those sweet eyes that has such darkness and crazy.
It was Craven's ability to take audiences to the dark side that kept him in the minds of Dimension executives, even though he had passed on the project more than once.
I think the reason that I passed on it was my usual stupidity. You know, just I have this long career-long ambivalence towards doing genre films, and I don't want to sound like I'm prissy, but there is an element to the genre that is can be said to be misogynistic, for instance, and always carving up girls. And there's a part of me that feels like, how much longer do you want to do this?
The answer came after a certain young movie star showed interest in the project, a move which enticed Craven to seriously reconsider dipping his toe back into the bloody waters that made him famous.
It was Bob that came to me and said, and I've got Drew Barrymore attached. I said, Drew Barrymore wants to be in a horror film? She likes it.
Getting Drew Barrymore in Scream was a huge deal.
While Drew was obviously famous at the time and a star at the time, she had not yet become the megastar that she is now.
Despite the attachment of Barrymore, Craven was still not so quick to dismiss his initial concerns.
I think it was actually the opening section in the writing, just the sort of tormenting of a girl for 15 minutes and then having her killed and disemboweled. And I just said, well, do I want to do this again? What's this going to do to my karma?
In the end, it was the words of a young fan that solved the director's moral dilemma.
A little kid, I think 12 years old, somewhere around there, coming up to me and saying, you should do a real kick-ass movie again because you've been doing, your movies are getting softer and softer. And that just stuck with me, you know. Look, you've been fighting this whole career, but the movies you've made that have really been important have crossed the boundaries of decency and are scary because they are ruthless. And I call it Bob Weinstein. If that job is still open, I'll take it.
You know, sat down and over a period of time, I think he came to see what it could be.
Drew Barrymore played a big role in getting Wes to take another look at the project and see what it really was.
He said yes, and we were all thrilled, and it took off.
When he came on board, we knew we had something.
With a genre-bending script, a Hollywood starlet in the lead, and their first-choice director officially on board, the film was finally beginning to take shape. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, until the day Drew Barrymore came up with a radical idea, one that was either uniquely inspired or one that could completely derail the project. The question now became, would Wes Craven's scary movie ever see the light of day?
Don't worry, you'll find out soon enough, I promise.
In 1995, screenwriting newcomer Kevin Williamson wrote a script that combined teenagers, terror, and humor in a way no one had before, attracting upstart genre studio Dimension Films, and after a few false starts, famed horror director Wes Craven. With the key elements in place behind the camera, Craven's next goal was to cast the movie with stars plucked from the world of film and television. But first, the production had to deal with a major blow. Drew Barrymore, the star who was attached to play the lead role of Sydney, had a last-minute and very unexpected change of heart.
And about 5 or 6 weeks till we were to shoot in prep, she changed her mind.
What does she want to do? She wants to just be in the opening.
I remember Drew actually telling us, the audience will think, because I'm Drew Barrymore, that I'll survive this movie and I get killed in the first, 5 minutes of the film.
We were not happy at all, but, we were on board.
And I almost said, okay, that's it, I'm out of here.
I think for a minute there, Wes thought about quitting.
But he didn't quit. Rather, Craven and his team adjusted to Barrymore's bold new idea.
She loved that opening sequence.
You never told me your name.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
It was such a canny decision. She worked for 5 days, and she made a niche in cinematic history for genre films in that 5 days of incredible work.
And even though Drew Barrymore would no longer be playing the lead, the producers and Wes Craven quickly realized that losing their star didn't mean losing her star power.
With Drew being attached, that's really what got the rest of the cast into it.
The phones were ringing off the hook. Everybody wanted to be in this movie. So our casting sessions were fantastic. They were great.
Those early casting sessions would begin with the search for an actress to fill Barrymore's shoes in the role of the film's heroine, Sidney Prescott, a character that combined intelligence and strength with real vulnerability.
It goes back to, the classic Scream Queen. I mean, Sigourney Weaver in Alien, Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween.
There's numerous other actresses that they had screen tested.
Alicia Wood came in, Brittany Murphy came in. Reese Witherspoon never actually came in, but her name was certainly in consideration.
The role of Sidney would ultimately go to an actress who'd already cast a spell over teen audiences in the 1996 cult favorite, The Craft, and who is currently a staple on a hit weekly television show.
And I remember Ned was on Party of Five. That show was really starting to blow up.
The camera pans to a desk against the wall where Sidney Prescott, a young girl of 17, sits, her face glued to the computer monitor in front of her. I was at a place in my career that was very new. I had done Party of Five, and that had hit in the first year, and I'd done the craft.
She just had a perfect combination of the innocence that you needed, but the strength of that girl who was going to be able to kick ass.
When we saw Nev Campbell, there was no question.
So who are you?
The question isn't, who am I? The question is, where am I?
So where are you?
Your front porch.
Scream was really the first lead that I'd been up for in a film, and was called in and did a big audition, and I think I had several callbacks.
That's enough. Sub bucket out of here.
Do you see what you do to me?
Do you know what my dad will do to you?
You just believed her as this teenage girl, this vulnerable teenage girl. Everyone in the room when we watched it was like, that's Sydney.
With the film's lead in place, it was time to round out the rest of the cast, starting with Sydney's boyfriend, the charming yet broodingly mysterious Billy Loomis.
The Billy Loomis character, his name even is a tip of the hat to the Halloween movies, which were a big influence on Kevin. Sam Loomis is the character that Donald Pleasance played in the Halloween movies.
So we're looking at the part of Billy. It was so hard to find the perfect, handsome guy.
There suddenly was this buzz about this kid named Steve Ulrich.
He reminded Wes certainly of when he cast Johnny Depp in Nightmare on Elm Street.
It's just me.
Totally nailed it. There was just no question. He was Billy. He was fabulous.
He was the hot young guy, and you look back at his performance is pitch perfect.
Sheriff, I didn't kill anybody.
And all the girls went crazy. That's how you can tell. Every girl is turning red and sweating.
Did Norman Bates have a motive? No. And did they really ever explain why Hannibal Lecter liked to eat people? Don't think so. You see, it's scarier when there's no motive, Sid.
I knew that he was really like a hot new thing in Hollywood. He was the hot ingenue, if I can say that, Skeet.
Next in the casting lineup was Sydney's loyal best friend, Tatum Riley.
I had seen Rose McGowan at the Sundance Film Festival that year in a movie called The Doom Generation, and I was just so mesmerized with her.
From behind, a finger taps her shoulder. She spins around to see Tatum Riley, same age, feisty, carefree. I think Tatum was very glib, but at the same time she had a real sweetness, like in the scene in her bedroom.
Bam! Sid, super bitch.
Rose is so feisty, and her character, Tatum's so feisty.
Yeah, I think she was just funny. I think she was just going for the laugh.
Even with other contenders, such as television actresses Rebecca Gayheart and Melinda Clarke vying for the role, there was little doubt in the minds of the filmmakers as to who they would cast.
We did look a lot of people for that part, and in the end, there really was just no question because she totally embodied, what Tatum needed to be.
Rose manages to be cute and hot at the same time.
Finding the right actor for the pivotal role of Stu Macher, Tatum's beau and Billy's best friend, proved to be a case of a young actor being at the right place at the right time.
The day that Matthew Lillard came in, he happened to be across the hall with his girlfriend who was working with another casting director, and I looked at him and I said, you look good for this part. Would you mind coming in and auditioning, please?
Next to Tatum sits her boyfriend, Stuart, with his arms draped across her back. He's a Billy wannabe. Almost the jock, almost handsome, almost cool. He tries way too hard.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah, it was.
I go back and watch that, I'm like, first of all, I weigh 80 pounds. Second of all, I spit my way through the whole thing. And that vein that runs through the middle of my forehead is terrifying. I mean, that alone should have just automatically kicked me out of Hollywood in general.
Rounding out the lineup of suspects and soon-to-be victims was uber geek and resident horror film fanatic Randy Meeks.
He's the Joker, the wild card. And he's the one that you can't quite figure out, and he can comment on everybody because he's just slightly outside the group.
Across the table is a fifth wheel Randy, a tall and gangly kid with no such Billy-like aspirations. A witty jokester who elevates geek to coolness.
Did you really put her liver in the mailbox? Because I heard that they found her liver in the mailbox next to her spleen and her pancreas.
At the time, I was a very struggling actor, and I said, I gotta get in for this movie.
It was just one of those moments where we'd seen a lot of people for this role for Randy, and we just didn't know where we were going.
And I get a call from my agent. She goes, hey, it's not bad.
It was between him and Breckenmeyer, but just, it's just that certain something that got him the part instead of Breckenmeyer.
And 3, never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back.
Okay.
I love Breckenmeyer, but Jamie Kennedy really owned that part.
Thank you.
With the main teen cast now in place, the producers began their search for the right actors to portray the film's adult characters, beginning with Tatum's bumbling older brother, Deputy Dewey Riley.
Dewey.
A young officer looks at the clipboard. This is Deputy Riley, better known as Dewey. He's a big guy, 20s, handsome in a scrub-clean, boyish way.
Damn it, Dewey.
What did Mama tell you? When I wear this badge, you treat me like a man of the law.
That's one of my favorite aspects of Dewey, is that he's in a position of power, but no one gives him respect. You know, I always think in Dewey's mind, I always think like he thinks he's kind of Clint Eastwood. Like, you know, he thinks he's really cool, but then, you know, nobody else does.
The whole David thing was very interesting because he was, we offered him a role of one of the kids.
I read it, and I came in and I said, Wes, I really would rather do the role of Dewey. And he was like, Dewey? Well, why would you want to do that role? I was like, well, I do get a kiss for the Cox. And
If I may say so, Miss Weathers, you are much prettier in person.
I took a chance on this guy, wants it so much. So Dewey became kind of the heart of the movie.
Playing the yin to Dewey's yang was Gale Weathers, a cynical TV journalist and a difficult role to cast, until a television star surprised everyone and lobbied hard to get the role.
We probably offered the role of Gail to Janine Garofalo, and she passed on it. We also were very close to hiring Brooke Shields. And then we met Courtney.
I wanted to play the part of Gale Weathers because she was just a total bitch, and it was something that I hadn't got to play in a while, at least being on Friends for so long.
She was the hottest thing coming off of Friends. I mean, for her to be in a movie like this was a very big deal because people were really used to seeing her on the #1 show.
And I had to really do some persuading to get the part because they didn't really see me as a bitch. If I'm right about this, I could save a man's life. Do you know what that could do for my book sales?
And working under power-hungry Gale Weathers was her much-put-upon cameraman, Kenny Jones.
Jumping from the driver's seat is Kenny, Gale's cameraman and flunky, an earnest young chap on the chubby side. I was kind of in decent shape before the film, and there's all these fat jokes about Kenny, so I purposefully put on 20 pounds.
Kenny?
Yeah?
I know that you're about 50 pounds overweight, but when I say hurry, please interpret that as move your fat tub of lard ass now!
It was trying to make him likable and that the audience has some empathy for him.
With the majority of the cast now in place, there was just one more important role to fill, that of the maniacal killer. But this time, it wouldn't really matter what the actor looked like. The killer in Wes Craven's latest movie would be known for something that almost every slasher icon before never had, a voice. And to keep the terror real, that voice belonged to a man the cast, even to this day, has never seen.
You hang up on me, you'll die just like your mother.
With casting for Wes Craven's new horror film nearly complete, the search was on to fill the final critical role, that of the masked, knife-wielding killer. Like many of the murderers from horror movies past, Ghostface would be played on screen by a Hollywood stuntman. But the threatening voice of the killer would be brought to life by another unseen actor.
Do you want to die, Sidney?
Roger Jackson, the perfect voiceover artist. His voice is just creepy and menacing enough. You hear that voice, it still gives you chills.
I was hired to play the scene with Drew Barrymore. And the intention at that time was that I was going to play the scenes and they would dub a voice in later.
I think Roger brought a real intelligence and, creepiness, probably much more intelligent than we had planned on.
It was not only his intelligence and creepiness that won the veteran voice actor the role, but his ability to completely terrify the actors he was playing against. In truth, though Jackson only played the voice of the killer, he actually was on set and on the phone during each take, but kept completely hidden from the actors, which only added to the character's frightening mystique.
Well, that's actually an interesting thing. Wes did not let the actors see who was doing the voice.
It was always a point to keep us separate because my job is to frighten them during the filming. There is no
That's an interesting psychological thing.
you create in your own imagination.
I think it was really great choice of Wes's to not have any of the actors actually meet Roger, because I think it helped us all to stay in character and not be so familiar with him as a person.
The question isn't, who am I? The question is, where am I?
But it wasn't just physical proximity to his on-screen victims that made Ghostface menacing. It was his voice, cleverly enhanced by an electronic handheld device that further allowed the killer to disguise his identity.
Called Guess How I'm Gonna Die! The voice box was, one of the smartest, most clever gimmicks, because that, hello, Sydney. It's kind of in Saw, you hear, I wanna play a game.
I wanna play a game.
The idea that anyone could be the killer, but just by putting on the costume and using the voice box, was so scary because you didn't know who it was.
The next step in the creation of Ghostface was to find the right look to match the menacing voice. A task which seemed simple enough, but became a source of creative frustration for the filmmakers and effects artists.
The script just says Ghostface. We had no idea what that looks like.
Okay, that's fantastic on the page, but how do you translate that into something visual?
Wes had to shoot the movie, so obviously it came into his mind, what does this guy look like?
Even some of the most gifted special effects artists in Hollywood were at a loss to find the right face for the film's iconic killer.
I know that they had a lot of people drawing pictures of scary things, you know, witches, goblins, monsters, vampires, and they would send them to Wes. Either Wes liked them or didn't like them.
Remember, we had our first production meeting, and I took all the sketches with me and showed Wes, and he's like, maybe this one, but I don't know.
So we had our art department making up masks, and we're getting closer and closer to the time to shoot.
Everything that we saw just didn't look good. It wasn't right. It didn't carry any weight.
Just none of them, to me, looked like the right mask.
Once again, it was being at the right place at the right time that presented Craven with a solution.
So we were scouting, and we ended up scouting in the house where they shot Shadow of a Doubt. In that house is where I found the Ghostface. There was a woman who was older, and her kids were grown up and had moved out. And I went upstairs. It was like her son's bedroom, and the ghost mask was sitting there.
So we took the mask and we sent it to Dimension Films, and they said, okay, we like that, so have your guys make one kind of like that, because we don't own it.
And he brought it to us and said, this is what I think I want it to be. We sculpted all different versions, like one with longer chin, one with a furrowed brow, one with bigger eye sockets, one with smaller eye sockets, one with broader face. We sculpted and resculpted and resculpted and resculpted.
And none of the masks were looking good. You know, they just didn't have what that mask had.
And I think I must have seen maybe 7 different versions of it before we came to the final, but there's something about the design that is really striking and really shocking when it comes up against you.
The thing about it is, it just happens to be so archetypal. Many people compare it to Edvard Munch's The Scream. It has a mournful sadness that's almost dreamlike.
It was like a love affair with that mask. I mean, and it has struck everybody that sees that mask has been drawn to it.
With the look of the mask finally settled upon, the next step was to find a suitable costume for Ghostface.
There's no description of what the killer is wearing. So take the mask out of your mind and you have a guy. Wes spent a lot of time talking to us about what do we think he's wearing.
We went a long way down the road with white robes, because it was a ghost, supposedly.
Does he look like Casper? And obviously, you know, you put a guy in white with a white mask, you don't want him to look like he's in the Klan either. So what's he gonna look like?
So we discussed with the costume designer at the time, and we came up with a black costume. It had a little bit of sheen to it and sparkle so that it would catch the light.
It was quickly discovered that the costume also needed to serve a vital plot function.
So we came up with the idea of covering the whole body, covering the hands, covering the feet, because it also had to kind of be a couple different people.
So it actually got down to covering every square inch of the killer with this costume that we devised.
The main thing we were worrying about was just, were people going to buy the ghost as anybody? And I think they totally do.
There is this kind of supernatural killer in a way. I mean, Ghostface, he can fall out windows almost like Michael Myers and walk away and not a scratch.
We're getting there, getting there.
There's never a bruise on the face from the fights that Ghostface gets in.
The face, anybody can put that on, which I think is one of the things that makes the Scream movie scarier, is that it could be anybody. And they're using this persona, this white, blank, Ghostface, emotionless thing, as this way to rip you to pieces.
Underneath the mask. Underneath the monster that is out there, that horrible Ghostface killer is us. And I think that is, to me, the most important thing that we all have to do as human beings is stop externalizing evil and look inside of ourselves.
I am the darkness that exists in the mind of all people. I am not one person. I exist across the spectrum of the human psyche, and I will find a way to you.
With a cast, a killer, and a crew ready to go, everyone looked forward to the first day of shooting in the bucolic Northern California town of Santa Rosa. But actors and crew members who thought the peaceful surroundings meant a trouble-free shoot were in for a major surprise when all hell broke loose over the script and the filmmakers found themselves in the middle of a political firefight. In the spring of 1996, Studio Dimension Films and veteran horror director Wes Craven were ready to bring Kevin Williamson's genre-bending screenplay Scary Movie to life. But first, they needed to find the right location to stand in for the film's pastoral community of Woodsboro, the place where all of the movie's terror would be unleashed.
The location of where the film was to be shot was, I thought, critical. And we went up to the wine country and scouted. It's back when I was thinking, as a loyal Californian, I have to shoot in California.
Miramax wanted to do this movie for $15 million, and they didn't want to do it in California. It was going to be too expensive.
And they said, well, we want you to shoot in Vancouver because it's going to save us $1 million. It's a beautiful place, but it's not American.
And then we went to Santa Rosa, and you know, it's all there. It seemed it just fit. You know, the Healdsburg town square, the small town atmosphere, the houses.
And it was one of those times where I've taken kind of a tough stand. I remember going to Bob's office in New York and saying, I think this is very important.
And somebody in Bob or Harvey's office said, that's fine, instead of Wes Craven's Scary Movie. We'll just do Joe Blow's Scary Movie.
You know? Okay, there goes a great job.
And one of the Weinsteins said, all right, his name is worth $3 million, go get him.
And went back up and he said, well, if it's that important, okay, fine. No, so it was that close.
With the location dispute behind him, Wes Craven began scouting in the picturesque Northern California wine country, finally settling on the beautiful town of Santa Rosa. For Craven and his team, one location in particular caught their attention.
There was a beautiful high school in Santa Rosa that they seemed to be very film-friendly.
Santa Rosa High School had actually been used in film before. It's the high school in Francis Ford Coppola's Peggy Sue Got Married.
And that was one of the big selling points about going to Santa Rosa was, here we have this high school and it seems perfect. It seems the best for production.
I wanted very much that very, very American feel to it, so that's how we ended up there.
But the reception the filmmakers received was not as inviting as the location's rolling green hills. Although the high school's administration had initially welcomed the cast and crew, it was the Santa Rosa City School Board that had the final say, and they were less than enthused.
The principal and everybody else there was extremely excited about it, so that was totally a positive experience. So we went weeks and weeks into pre-production, and then very close to the time we were going to shoot, the school board said, oh, wait a minute, you gotta shoot there, let us read the script.
When we had our first presentation, we were told that it was a spoof, a comedy, and what we read was not.
They read the script and were completely affronted by it, just thought it was despicable and should not be allowed in their high school, and pulled the contract.
The board had an opinion at the time. They didn't really want to glorify violence against children. And you have to remember, that was a sensitive period of time for Sonoma County.
The production's timing coincided with the tragedy of Polly Klaas, a case that gained national attention. On October 1st, 1993, 12-year-old Polly was kidnapped at knife point from her mother's home during a slumber party. She was later found murdered, having been strangled by her abductor, Richard Allen Davis.
And the trial was just starting against Davis, who was the murderer. This had a great impact upon the feelings of our community, and there was a lot of raw nerves about it, as I recall.
And basically what they did is they had a big town hall, and everyone was allowed to say their piece. And so one citizen after the other would come up and give their opinion as to whether or not we should shoot there.
It
was a vocal crowd that greeted school district directors tonight, along with not one, but two long lines of people ready to comment on the controversy.
The entire scientific community has reached a consensus that violent viewing is harmful for people. It's most harmful for young people. It's harmful.
Those opposed to the movie cited the violence expected to be associated with the horror flick as a reason for banning the film crew from campus.
The thing that needs to be understood, though, is the decision to not allow the Wes Craven production here was not based on people's views of morality or the content of his film. It was based on the disruption of the educational program.
And then they voted. And they voted us out.
In retrospect, I can understand the trauma that was on that area because of that case, but they were very harsh. We were treated like scum.
I don't draw any judgment upon his work. I think he's a talented and brilliant guy. It's just a game we didn't want to play, and we weren't interested in pursuing it.
I did put in the end credits, and no thanks whatsoever to the center. Rose the school board.
I guess he got his last word in on us, and maybe appropriately so.
Craven and his crew ultimately solved their location issue when they were invited to shoot the film's high school sequences at a local community center in the neighboring town of Sonoma.
It had been a high school, and it didn't fall into the jurisdiction of any of the school boards, so we could pay to use it. And that ended up being
Elsa,
the
I hope you like ice
And we
cream
put
because
big
you got
plywood
one.
sign up over the thing.
Thank you.
And put some lockers in the hallways.
The next location to
Appreciate
lock down
that.
was to be the home of Tatum and Dewey Riley, which turned out to be near two other homes that had already earned their own film pedigree.
Across the street from Tatum's house, Rose McGowan's house, was the Pollyanna house. And then next door, across the side street, is the house that was used in Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt.
With its filming locations finally secured, production of Wes Craven's Scary Movie officially began on April 15th, 1996.
Action! The first 5 days of photography in Scream was the opening Drew Barrymore sequence.
The character Casey you were so with her, making her Jiffy Pop and Home Alone.
Lovely drawing.
She's
Aw,
vulnerable. She
thank you.
thinks she's safe because she's in her home.
That whole opening with Drew was meant to start in a completely innocent way and get heavier and heavier and heavier.
And I love the elements that sort of tied it to, when a stranger calls, that creepy guy on the phone.
Why haven't you checked the children?
All right.
It's something.
Okay,
of
we're
a
building.
cultural
We're gonna add a little bit of purples in there
All I have to
too.
say is,
We've traced the call. It's coming from inside the house.
and everyone would know what you were talking about.
But the idea that you could now do that to somebody with a cell phone and that they're wandering around your house looking at you is terrifying.
Like the frightening film that inspired it, the terror threatening the young girl was just a phone call away. And voice actor Roger Jackson's job was to provide the menace that would make Drew Barrymore's performance seem very, very real.
It's my job to try and scare the hell out of them.
A lot of what she did at full tilt, screaming, running around on her bare feet, that was all for real. She found it. She brought it.
I mean, people thought,
All right.
Drew Barrymore is going to be in the whole film, and it suddenly was this almost a psycho switch where he just dispensed.
Need to
it
sharpen my
so
pencil.
quickly.
I cried when, Drew Barrymore gets stabbed. I thought her performance was magnificent.
It was so powerful, and Drew did such an amazing job with it. I had such a great time working with her that it turned out to be one of the best things on my reel, so to speak.
But despite Wes Craven's confidence, he still had to prove his vision of the film to the studio.
I know as those dailies were coming in, there was concern on part of the studio that it wasn't going to be scary, that it wasn't being shot the way they had hoped it would be shot. I know they were putting all sorts of pressure on Wes and everything like that.
And in Hollywood parlance, that means you're about to be fired.
There was a lot of things in the beginning that could have made the ship sink.
Bob hated the Ghostface.
All right,
We shot
here we
the
go.
entire Drew Barrymore scene with it.
I didn't think that the audiences would be scared about it, but shows you what I know.
It's difficult, because you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
So the filmmakers set out to prove to the studio the opening sequence and the look of the film's ghost-faced killer would indeed work.
We immediately cut it as fast as we could and sent 13 minutes of work print to Bob Weinstein and Dimension Films in New York. I believe their immediate response was, "Oh my God, we were so wrong. This is brilliant. Whatever you need." Everything changed based on that opening 13 minutes.
It's really a testament to Wes. I mean, having
strong vision, and he really put himself out there.
With the
Where's
first
that other
scenes
purple?
complete, Wes Craven led his cast and crew onward, but nothing could prepare them for what would end
I always have that habit of when I drop a pencil down and I don't know where it is. It's- Okay.
In the spring of 1996,
Now-
production on Scary Movie was moving forward. Despite a bitter
we need
fight
to
with the local school board,
add a little bit of
the
blue to the
film
knife as
in a
well.
local high school. In addition, actress Drew Barrymore had opted out of playing the lead role, choosing instead to portray the slasher film's first on-screen victim. While these hurdles were behind them, director Wes Craven and his team faced yet another challenge: shooting the film's climactic and blood-drenched 42-minute finale.
Yeah, that was the scene from Hell. It was essentially the whole third act. So it began with the party at the house, at Stu's house, and since it didn't change locations, it all was lumped under, scene 118, A, B, C, D, up through the alphabet.
That just became kind of a joke that we survived scene 118.
It's called People Live, People Die.
It just kind of seemed endless that we were up at this house and just night after night.
That was where, Billy and Sid made love. That was where Randy gave his rules of horror. That was where Dewey and Gail showed up. And it just went on and on and on. We were at that location forever.
Shot over a grueling 21-night schedule, the film's last act would see the end of many of its most memorable characters, beginning with Sidney's loyal best friend, Tatum.
It was wet every night.
Now, a lot of the work
And Rose
is going to be about doing this fabric, making this fabric look real.
And to this
in the
day,
arm.
I get asked if I had some sort of a prosthetic in my chest, which I didn't even know was possible. I had no idea what was going on, but it became
So I
very
think we're just going to build this up short, like slowly.
Her breasts were very, very taut.
It was cold there when we were shooting. I mean, it was very nipply.
I know, good, huh?
But McGowan had more pressing concerns, such as her character's impending death scene.
It was really fun killing Rose McGowan, but the only problem is she said she couldn't scream. So that took a lot of work because she was getting killed in the garage door.
They actually had to nail me to the inside of the garage door so I wouldn't fall through. And I have bruises from hanging and like screaming and going up and down and up and down. I did find that I can, in fact, fit through doggy doors.
She got through. It was amazing. She got much farther through than we thought she would.
Also amazing, at least to the actors in hindsight, was the fact that no one, including Tatum's own brother, Deputy Dewey, seemed to acknowledge poor Tatum's untimely demise.
I feel quite badly that Dewey was never
Okay,
sad
let's see.
about Tatum's death.
I mean, I obviously should have mourned the death of my sister.
What a cold bastard.
That happened later in the hospital room. What do you mean she's gone?
The next to find himself at the mercy of Ghostface was Kenny the cameraman.
That was the day my wife first came to visit. And then I remember my neck was cut open. And, oh, yeah, by the way, and threw my head back and just my neck gapes open. And it freaked her completely out that it was that realistic, up close.
And while the casualties on screen were gory and dramatic, the unexpected loss of a key behind-the-scenes player was, for some, just as shocking.
I would like to say that I survived scene 118, but in fact that was on the last week of shooting, and I was fired.
We went to work one day and Mark wasn't there, and it's kind of funky that they would just let the DP go and nobody says a word.
I don't really know totally what happened. I think him and Wes probably had creative differences.
Now I have no idea what the backstory was with the studio, with Harvey, with Bob, with Wes, but I do know when we saw dailies that night, Wes turned around and said to me, all this footage is out of focus.
There were certain issues with focus and things being discussed.
Wes and Marianne come from another room and said, here's what we want you to do. We want you to fire your camera crew, all those people, the dolly grip, and that's what the solution will be.
And sometimes the head of the department will go to the lengths of saying, well, if you're going to get rid of them, you're going to get rid of me too.
And I said, why don't you get a new DP as well?
Problem is, when you say that, you better be prepared for people to take you up on it.
And they said, you know what? Good idea. I don't get it. I don't know what the problem is. All this footage and all the footage that I shot in the film is still in the movie. So that was my last night shooting on Scream.
With only a few days left of shooting, a new director of photography, Peter Deming, was brought in to finish the picture. Now, Craven and his crew prepared to deliver the film's final revelation, the unmasking of Ghostface, and the shocking reveal of the killer's identity.
I thought the reveal was brilliant. I think it was unexpected for audiences.
It's one of those moments where you want to just walk up to the writer and shake his hand and go, you've done something no one thought of before.
I mean, I've sat in a full audience of that movie and was blown
Hello,
away
Mystic.
by hearing people
Good to see
trying
ya.
figure out who it was.
You know, I think.
Hope you're well. Hope you had a good Halloween.
And most often you're just trying to figure out who the one person is.
The great red herring is that, of course, there's not one killer. There are two.
Surprise, Sydney.
That's why he can be in all these places at once, because it's two people.
So I thought the twist at the end was very good.
It's all part of the game,
Okay.
Sydney. It's called Guess How I'm Gonna Die.
I always thought of it as Captain Hook and Smee in Peter Pan. You know, you have this devilish kind of leader who's charismatic and beautiful, and everyone, you know, follows him, but he's got this little sidekick and he'll do anything.
They have this sort of dynamic duo quality. Skeet's character Billy is definitely the mastermind of the operation. I think Matthew Lillard's character was probably in love with him and is willing to do anything he says.
I mean, they're maniacal, ruthless killers. I mean, they're pretty terrifying.
Start building up this fabric in the arm here. It's going to take a little bit.
Apart. You're hanging people from trees. You're killing them in a
Fabric is not easy to do.
Believe the level of insanity. They were truly scary.
It was just one intense scene after the other, culminating with Billy, Stu, and Sid in the kitchen, and the guys stabbing each other, and everybody covered in blood.
I distinctly have these visions of myself and Nev and Skeet sitting in corners with blood, covered in blood. And you start the night, covered in blood, and you finish the night with the sun coming up covered in blood.
I was covered in corn syrup for weeks on end. That just got a bit old and disgusting.
Plus it was freezing, so it's like sticky, freezing blood. And Wes is like, one of his main quotes almost on every movie is, "More blood."
More blood. Don't be stingy.
He's always saying more blood.
But the bloodiest scene was yet to come, with the climactic showdown between Sydney and the two killers as they revealed their murderous motive.
Hear that, Stu? I think she wants a motive. Here they start to reveal the motive, which there were two camps when I sold this script, who felt one camp felt that there should be no motive. It was scarier without one.
I don't really believe in motive, Sid. I mean, did Norman Bates have a motive?
No.
Did they ever really decide why Hannibal Lecter liked to eat people?
Don't think so. And then another group of people felt that there should be a motive.
Your slut mother was fucking my father. And she's the reason my mom abandoned me.
So I took that note, and the end result was both.
I think the stuff at the end with Matthew and Skeet is pretty gratuitous. There's a lot of blood, and the fact that they're stabbing each other.
On a scale of 1 to 10, they're freaks. They're a 10.
What was that great line?
Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos more creative.
You were basically setting up that all rules were off.
We know these rules too. We're not going to do them, and if we do them, we're now very, very aware that we're doing them.
And I think that was pretty genius of Kevin to turn horror on itself in a way, and bring those things up and then include them in the film.
So the audience, oh, I know what's going to happen, and then they don't know what's going to happen.
They're all the same. Some stupid killer stalking some big-breasted girl who can't act, who's always running up the stairs when she should be going out the front door. It's insulting.
Of course, then when the killer attacks, she does exactly that.
And I think there's also something fun about audience members sitting and watching someone do something really stupid and going, no, don't do it, don't jump up, don't go up the stairs. So I think it was fun for us to actually admit that and then carry it through.
Kevin was brazen about it. He drew your attention directly to those tropes.
Knowing what all the cliches are and staying all of them on their heads.
Who's there? I'm calling the police.
You should never say who's there. Don't you watch scary movies? It's a death wish.
They'd been around for so long, and characters that started doing the same thing over and over again. Don't go outside. No, it's a weird sound. I have to go outside and get killed,
Is anybody out there? Somebody there?
You guys doing something I shouldn't see?
Basically, in all the horror movies up until that point, when you say that stuff, you get killed.
No genre cliche seems safe from this scary movie. with the film even shattering what may be the most infamous of slasher movie rules.
Never make love in a horror film.
Don't have sex. That's one of the rules. Like, you have sex, then you're going to die. Like, if you want to stay alive, just don't have sex with anybody.
The character does a lot of the things that the film claims she shouldn't do, and if she's going to survive, and then goes ahead and does them and does survive.
And the fact that, you know, the moment that Sydney figures out, or thinks she's figured out who the killer is.
Yeah,
is
I like
the
that.
moment
Okay,
she
that
has
works
sex.
good.
Although Sidney Prescott would ultimately prevail over her homicidal tormentors, the film would find time to turn one more horror cliche on its head.
Careful. This is the moment when the supposedly dead killer comes back to life.
That goes here.
One last scare.
Not in my movie.
Most horror movies, most movies with a killer, you cannot kill the killer, but the cops always die.
My character was supposed to die in the first one.
Sydney?
We liked David's portrayal of Dewey so much that we brought him back.
And we all kind of looked at each other and said, we'd be really stupid if we didn't film a shot of Dewey coming out being alive. And so we did. We stuck it on the last day of shooting there.
And I was like, really, wow. And then it's completely changed my life. That decision on the set at that time is just kind of unbelievable.
Having survived a grueling 21-night shoot in what many cast and crew dubbed the longest night in horror history, the film finally wrapped on June 8, 1996, much to the delight and relief of Craven, his crew, and especially the cast.
I think by the end of it, we were all very relieved to be finished.
I think the actors went out and literally put all their wardrobe in a pile and burned it. And we had t-shirts made, I survived scene 118.
Although the cast was set free and most of the crew had survived Scene 118, the directors' battles were far from over. When the MPAA, Hollywood's Film Rating Association, weighed in, Craven was blindsided yet again, this time in the form of an NC-17 rating, a feature film's kiss of death. In the summer of 1996, after 40 days of shooting and overcoming location setbacks, last-minute casting changes, and the filming of one of the longest and bloodiest slasher movie finales in recent memory, production wrapped on the genre-bending horror film Scary Movie. But director Wes Craven would find himself embroiled in yet another contentious battle over his film, this time with the ratings board of the Motion Picture Association of America.
Scream, out of the gate, no one knew what it was, so they came down on it.
When we were going through the MPAA challenges on Scream, which were sort of rampant, I think we had to go back 9 times.
It's very, very lengthy, very expensive, and the MPA can say, okay, we're gonna look at it again in 2 weeks. And you're screwed.
The MPAA is always after us. It's always the worst thing in the world for a director to cut anything.
Although Craven initially refused to cut anything from his movie, Dimension Films could not afford to gamble on an NC-17 rating.
So we had a little bit of a battle with Bob Weinstein because obviously they don't want to put a movie out as an NC-17. So Wes lost that battle. And we ended up making some cuts.
It's hard when you don't get your rating to understand why. Is it too much blood? Is it too much gore?
Well, look, let's speak frankly. I think, genre films, horror films, slasher films are about human beings doing cruel and horrible things to each other.
I can remember when Wes had to go back and take some frames out of Kenny's death scene because they said the look on my face was too disturbing and it had to be trimmed. And Wes's argument was, it's murder, it should be disturbing.
Probably the most gratuitous things in the movie are the boyfriend, the gutted boyfriend.
And one of the things they objected to was the fact as he sat there, his guts became victim to gravity and shifted and fell.
Tatum's death was one of the big MPA challenges. We went back several times on that and how much we could show of her actually getting crushed in the garage door.
And they essentially were telling us that the entire scene 118, especially Bill and Stu in the kitchen, was just too bloody and it had to be taken out of the picture. And it would have killed the picture.
Can't, Billy. Oh, you cut me 2 feet. I think I'm dying here, man.
And there was a shot of Stu's hand sort of hanging down and blood was dripping off it. And I think the MPA said, okay, That's moving blood. We don't allow moving blood, so cut that short. So we cut that short.
But Craven's cuts did not land him any closer to getting the R rating he needed.
It went on for weeks, and you're always in a situation where your budget is disappearing. You're at the end of post-production. You've got the thing, you're usually in mix, so all the editing is done, and now you're fighting this thing, and they're asking for changes. Every change is every single department has to go back and redo all their tracks.
It was back and forth, and Wes was writing letters and phone calls, and what would it take to actually be able to get the rating?
And with the film's December release date right around the corner, it seemed as if Craven would need a Christmas miracle.
And we were getting nowhere. So what happened is Bob Weinstein made a call to MPAA as the head of the studio, and the next thing I knew, we had an R rating.
I think that when we expressed to them, please watch it again, understand the context of how this is happening, that there was an element of humor in it.
And I said, Bob, what did you say to them? And he said, I told him it's a comedy. It's a comedy, it's a satire.
And obviously it's a intense situation, but it wasn't worthy of the rating they wanted to give it.
And that made all the difference. So every film I'm going to make from now on, I'm going to say it's a comedy.
And indeed, Scary Movie had plenty of comedy. Kevin Williamson's in-jokes and pop culture references set it apart from other horror films being released at the time.
I mean, you can only hear that Richard Gere gerbil story so many times before you have to start believing it.
And suddenly the audience went nuts because that was this crazy urban legend that everyone had heard.
Obviously, it was very politically incorrect.
And I said, it's too good a joke, you know? It's like life can be cruel. So we kept it in.
But Richard Gere wasn't the only famous actor to be shredded in Kevin Williamson's razor-sharp script.
So we had this small cameo, and we read a lot of people, and it was just one of those things. Henry Winkler came in and nailed it.
You know, when he's threatening the two kids with the scissors and everything like that, you're like, this guy's crazy.
You're absolutely right. It is not fair. Fairness.
That's pretty funny, Elizabeth. Your mom got carded at Dracula?
Even Wes Craven could not escape being caught up in one of the film's many inside jokes.
There's a famous shot of the janitor sweeping the hallway.
Shits. Would you call me? Huh? Not your friend.
And it's just Wes with a Freddy hat and sweater on.
Somebody asked me, you should do like a Hitchcock cameo. I always push it off and say, oh, no, I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. And so you have to do it. Why don't you be the janitor? So the day before I sent down and got the whole Freddy costume, which I had squirreled away in storage. I felt ridiculous and everything else, but you know, we put it in there and people seem to like it. So what can I say?
With its self-conscious jokes and inside references, Kevin Williamson's title, Scary Movie, seemed to be perfect, but not everyone agreed.
I said, you've got the wrong title. And he said, why? And I said, it's a scary, terror-filled movie with elements of comedy.
The original title of Scream was Scary Movie, and we all loved it. And then we heard that Bob wanted to call it Scream.
We were not happy at all that they changed the title. You know, it was a mandate. It was absolutely a mandate from Bob and Harvey that we changed the title.
Michael Jackson had a song out, and Harvey's listening to it, and of course the song was Scream. So I called them up, and I said, guys, we've got the title, Scream.
And when that came out of his mouth, it was like there was a moment of silence. Everyone was like, yes, that's the title of the movie.
That was one of the places where Bob prevailed, thank God.
When you see the Scream movies now, that they ever could have been called something else is amazing. They are Scream.
With a completed film, an R rating, and a new title, Wes Craven's Scream was finally ready to be unleashed on moviegoers. But one pressing question remained. Would audiences be willing to line up for a slasher film during what many deem the most wonderful time of the year? On December 20th, 1996, at the height of the holiday movie season...
You know, as someone who's waited tables before, it's a good common thing to ask older women for their ID. A lot of times they ended up being very flattered, and you get better tips.
What do they take Christmas off?
Bob, that's when everybody goes to see family films. He says, exactly. So the horror audience has nothing to see.
So there was the idea to say, great, you know what, let's go against the grain and let's build the audience from there.
And lo and behold, he puts it out at Christmas. Everybody was thinking that we're doomed.
Variety, 4 weeks before we came out, called us DOA.
While the film earned $6.4 million in its opening weekend, it was hardly the early Christmas present everybody had been hoping for.
I got the numbers in the first weekend, and it was like, okay. I said, that's it. People were writing Wes Craven's washed up, which I get about every 10 years.
We went to see our movie, and there was nobody in the audience. We thought, oh, you know, we didn't nail it, we didn't get it, it's not gonna make a lot of money.
Despite early critical pans and a less than spectacular opening, Scream began to show signs of life.
There was something special happening. The second week, it made about the same. No drop. I can't emphasize what a big deal that is. No drop.
Third weekend, up higher than the first weekend. Everybody went, wow. And then bang, it took off.
While audiences were shocked and delighted by the film, so too were the cast and filmmakers by Scream's rise to success.
It was like word of mouth. Once that happened, I was like, uh-oh, we're onto something.
It was the picture that just would not quit.
It was just like, wow, this movie is really the little scary movie engine that could.
And then it just kept going and going and going until it made, $5 billion or whatever.
The film eventually brought in a final tally of $103 million in the United States, staying in theaters an astounding 31 weeks.
The movie held the record for a long time as the highest grossing horror movie of all time.
The movie made over $100 million and cost 16, so it's pretty good math.
Scream, a film that reinvigorated the horror genre, not only broke box office records, it even won Best Film at the 1997 MTV Movie Awards. Clearly, the film was connecting with its audience in a powerful way.
You know, it was something you'd never seen before. That's, I think, one of the reasons why the movie did so well at the time.
I knew it was going to be a really good movie as soon as he buried that knife into her chest.
This one hit at the right time in the right place with the right cast.
Scream certainly will be seen as the iconic horror movie of the 90s.
And I think sometimes that just happens with certain movies. You run into a moment where things come together at the perfect time, and you got a great director, an amazing writer, great crew and cast, and then you kind of capture lightning in a bottle.
While the on-screen chemistry of the cast was undeniably part of audiences' love affair with Scream, the off-camera experience was having the same effect on two of its co-stars.
I'm sorry. I'm on duty.
Wes had sort of like a get-together. I immediately went up to her and started flirting with her. Courtney, I'm David, I'm playing Dewey. She goes, yeah, I've heard about you. I was like, oh, really? I've heard about you too.
I think Courtney initially was like, yeah, he's cute, but this guy's nuts,
I'm like, she's a good actress, because I really believe that her character is falling for him.
It was immediately we were off to the sort of flirtation races.
And while life was looking bright for the cast and crew of Scream, it also left the door wide open for other studios and filmmakers to cash in on the horror movie's sudden success.
The Scream movies were truly an adrenaline shot to the heart of horror.
The horror genre just came back, came back very powerfully.
There's been a slew of horror films that have come out after Scream. The studio sort of jumped on the bandwagon and started to make a lot of films and realized that audiences were really looking for that.
I think Scream was definitely the catalyst for all these other movies, like Valentine or I Know What You Did Last Summer.
Urban Legend was another one. There was a bunch of them coming out.
I know a lot of the subtleties here are being lost on my camera. Just a shame. I'm looking at the stream right now and you're not seeing any of the details I'm putting in. It's...
Scary movies where somebody does something really stupid and everybody hates them for it. This is it.
That's the curse of when you do something new and original.
But the top spot of all horror slasher films still belonged to Scream. And Ghostface would go on to terrorize Sydney and her friends twice more in Scream 2 and Scream 3, both of which turned the conventions of horror sequels on their head.
Let's face it, baby, these days, you gotta have a sequel.
When I read the original script of Scream, he already had the sequel mapped out. In the end of the script was a 5-page treatment for the next Scream. He knew where it was going.
So we got to follow Sydney, you know, obviously from high school and then on into college and then into young adulthood. So that was almost unprecedented, I think, for films in the genre. And really, one of the things that kept me with it.
It's been the same cast throughout, and also we've had a lot of the same crew throughout, which is wonderful because it feels like going back to summer camp every time we do it. It's a really fun experience.
Seeing that the core cast comes back each time with Wes, it's not Scream without that.
The sequels are fun, and I enjoy them, but that first one was truly, purely terrifying.
You know, rather than thinking I was doing sequels, I was doing, you know, elements of a trilogy, which I just loved.
It was that enduring love for the Scream franchise that brought about the return of Craven, Williamson, Campbell, Arquette, and Cox for another round of mayhem 10 years after the events of Scream 3.
Get behind you!
Scream 4 was really interesting. You know, the new cast kind of felt like the old cast. They all hit it off, and there was a definite camaraderie there. It feels reminiscent of Scream 1.
I think all of us thought it might just be a real kick to go back to it. I was apprehensive at first, and I really wanted to know that Kevin would come up with a great concept.
The remake of the groundbreaking
Halloween, Texas Chainsaw, Dawn of the Dead, The Hills Have Eyes, Amityville Horror, Black Christmas, House of Wax, Mom Night, Night, Bloody Valentine. It's one of those, right? None of the above.
By following some rules of the genre, but daring to break others, Scream has made audiences laugh, cheer, and of course, scream. And in the process, it changed the face of fear.
You want to be on a roller coaster ride. You want to go into a dark theater, have the lights turn out, and just there's something about being scared out of your wits that has always appealed to me, and I think it appeals to everybody.
I would say there's three important people that are sort of the tentpoles of Scream. One is Kevin, who came up with the idea and wrote this fantastic script. One is Bob Weinstein, who was willing to go in and put a lot of money on the line. And the other, I guess, would be me. The three of us working together is a pretty powerful package.
And I'm very proud that Wes is there for all of them. Here he's done 1, 2, 3, and 4, and hopefully he'll do them all. And I like keeping that continuity.
The stars aligned to bring us all together to make something that, I don't know, really made cinematic history.
It really kind of got to me, and even seeing it, you know, I scream and laugh, and it's just really witty, you know, it just really works in so many ways.
I remember being there, and they're like, it's going to change your life, and this is unbelievable and huge, and, you know, this is going to put you on the map.
And I went to this little, like, place to eat, and some girl goes, you look like that guy from Scream, the Rule guy. And I was like, really? She's like, yeah. And I was like the first time in my life I was ever recognized.
It will always have a special place in my heart. And the fans, they made it. They made it what it is. And I treasure the filming of Scream as my happiest filming experience.
Scream's meant everything to me, really. I mean, I'm so thankful for Wes for casting me and for Kevin for writing such an amazing script. It's been a blessing, and it's been a fun movie to be a part of. But especially, I met my wife on it, and, you know, I have a daughter now because of this, and, you know, it's pretty much doesn't get any better than that.
I love this kind of movie. Never imagined myself ever being in a movie that was like this. And just do something different and work with Wes Craven. There couldn't be anything better than doing a Wes Craven movie.
So it was a fantastic ride, and it's been one ever since.
I think Kevin Williamson wrote a brilliant script from the beginning. We managed to pull off its brilliance. I think audiences love them. I think they're highly entertaining. They were great successes. They did great things for all of our careers. They were really fun to make. Yeah, and I'm really grateful to have had them in my life.
It was my first film, and I got to work with, you know, one of my idols, Wes Craven, who actually, you know, has become a good friend, and it's been like a love experience for me. I couldn't have asked for a better first foray into movie making.
As a director, you know, it's my most successful film by far, and it has kept me in touch with a very young audience, a very smart audience, and I'll keep making them as long as it's fun.
Thank you all, and love you all, and I gut you like fish.
Okay. Oops. That started way too far ahead than I wanted. Sorry. Let me fix that. So what we're looking at now is we're going to be looking at the a retrospective of the Scream franchise.
Scream was just like a phenomenon.
Scream reinvented a genre.
That was a beautiful time in the movie business.
There was this little place for magic to kind of be created. You had Wes Craven, who's a master of telling those stories.
In my wisdom, I turned the project down. Went home and thought about it, and I said, okay, if the job's still open, I'll do it.
Kevin was writing material that gave the audience a lot of credit.
It was clearly a genre that he loved.
So we didn't really expect it to have the success that it would. It made $30 million the first weekend.
And then the next weekend, it went up. And then the next weekend, it went up again.
Drew was like, no one's going to think that I'm gonna die.
That was just like, oh my God.
Everybody's a suspect!
A lot of secrecy around the script.
People literally thought I was the killer.
Or I remember seeing a lot of blacked out pages in my script. So I thought I might be wearing one of those.
I didn't know that I was going to be the killer until well into shooting.
No one's safe.
That's still looking a little rough. So
Punched me.
let's get in there.
It was very intense to see Ghostface. It becomes such a part of our pop culture.
This could grow and grow. It could be a phenomenon for a generation.
Allison, a documentary on Scream. Everyone's doing a retrospective these days, okay? Like Halloween, Friday the 13th, even Psycho is doing one.
Is someone butthurt because we didn't go to the Screamathon at the theater tonight?
Look, it would have been really nice to see it in the theater, okay?
Yeah, and to see Josh and or Mark in the process.
What, Josh and or Mark? Okay, they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. We can watch all 3 movies tonight and you can geek talk to either one about them tomorrow.
Fine, if we're gonna do this right, where's the popcorn?
Popcorn? Hello?
Hello?
Howdy.
Who's this?
Who are you trying to reach?
Do you like scary movies?
Oh, I get it. It's Josh trying to check in on you. Mark, then. How's the movie marathon?
You never answered my question.
Do I like scary movies? Not unless they're classics. We're all about shock value these days.
Do you think the Scream movies are classics?
Sure. Is there a reason you're bothering us? Because we're about to start a movie marathon of our own.
Let's start the movie.
I'm getting my glasses. I'll be right back.
Are you about to watch the Scream movies?
That's the plan, but then you already know that if you're hanging out with Josh.
Who's Josh?
Real cute, Mark. Are you supposed to be asking me horror movie questions by now?
Yeah, I like that idea.
Well,
Who directed all 3 Scream movies?
OMG, you couldn't think of a harder one? Wes Craven.
Okay then. Who's the first person to get killed in Scream?
Another easy one. Drew Barrymore.
Wrong. It was Steve, her boyfriend.
Rach, let's go.
I'm gonna eat the popcorn.
Come on, Rachel. Rach? Rach.
Well, thanks, Steph. The real one is gonna be doing the fabric here, right?
more to learn about the Scream movies, Allison.
I already know everything.
Ah, but you don't know the full story.
You know, in the early 1990s, horror films in general, and American horror in particular, were really in the doldrums. The 1980s were the heyday of the slasher movie.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Halloween, you know, the last entries in those series at that time had pretty much tanked. The studios and the independent companies were all looking for horror icons, new franchises to exploit, but they were pretty much burned out. The industry was ready for a big change, and that was provided by Scream in 1996.
Hello?
Hello, Sydney.
The title of the movie when we bought the script was called Scary Movie. I remember reading it at night in my house alone and having to stop after the first 30 pages, and I found myself laughing and terrified at the same time.
Yeah, Fabric is very difficult.
A couple of executives at Dimension.
Bob Weinstein's company had received it.
Often it's a subject that is used in a lot of drawing classes.
Companies, and mainly director-based companies that had done horror movies in the
You
past.
spend an entire session just on Fabric. Fabric is not easy because it has everything from lights to darks to folds to like it's line weights, shading. Your final exam's basically doing Fabric.
When the script first came to me, I had heard about it. Actually, I had read it. From the opening with the character who gets disemboweled at the end, I just felt like, I just don't want to do this again.
But if you can get Fabric looking good, it will really bring a drawing to life. So doing my best.
As an artist, he really wanted to do lots of different things. I mean, if you see Wes's career, he's written a novel, he directs, he attempted to do a Broadway play.
It was one of those periods in my career when I was thinking, I'm going to get doing something besides.
Let's see here.
And in my wisdom, I turned the project down. And what happened is I was doing an autograph session at one of these.
So basically when Fabric,
Kid must have been 11.
shading for Fabric, you've got dark on one side and a light highlight.
The movies you're doing are, you know, they're not kicking.
When it meets the highlight, tends to be where it's darkest. So in other words, if you draw a really dark line
If the job's still open, I'll do it.
here,
Well, I think Kevin was brilliant
right?
in writing the script. I heard he wrote it in 30 days. And
That's where it's usually
At the time, you know,
darkest, and you've got ambient light hitting the other side. So
you didn't want to reference that specific time in which you were
I'm just giving myself some
there was an idea that you know you wanted
play
to
here.
live in perpetuity. And Kevin's whole thing was diametrically opposed to that. He was like, I want to make it about right now, pop culture. This thing's gonna live like that.
Kevin was writing material that gave the audience a lot of credit in terms of intelligence. And that's what made it so much fun.
What's your favorite scary movie?
Halloween.
Kevin homaged Halloween left, right, and center.
You know, even in the opening, Drew Barrymore, what's your favorite movie? When the killer asks her on the phone, Halloween. You know, they say things like, we're going to go down to Mackenzie's house. The boy, his name is Billy Loomis.
In 1978, Halloween was the slasher icon movie. It spawned a genre, and I think Scream reinvented a genre.
There's a couple of things in this film that were just incredible, great luck. The finding of the mask was one.
in the script it was written ghost mask. Kevin didn't describe what the guy would be wearing.
What is this? What is this guy? It's a guy in a mask and a what? And I just could not get my head wrapped around the killer. So we had done a bunch of sketch stuff. John Bisson, who was our designer at the time.
Yeah, it's hard for anyone, really. It's a lot of twists and valleys.
What mask to use.
They had like the scary mask and this like overly scary mask and like these weird.
I'm just laying in my darkest black, and then I'll build up on top of it.
Face in there and try to figure out what they're, you know, look at what the options were.
So we were doing a location scout on the second floor of this nice little house. A little old lady owned it, and she had lived there with her husband for a bajillion years.
And we were walking around the house, and I went into a bedroom and I found the ghost mask. And I said, "Hey guys, what about this?"
Whoa, look at that! What, you know, and we went out and said, "What's that?" So my husband used to collect masks. I don't know where he got it. Could we borrow it? So we took it back, and you can't put something on screen that you don't own. So we gave it to K&B and said, make something like this.
We took that design and we needed to kind of do a tweak on it, like a 20% tweak, only because we were trying to avoid any copyright infringement. Bob Kurtzman sculpted, I'm gonna say did like 10 versions of that mask.
This is an original K&B mask made for Scream 1. This one actually, I don't believe was used on screen. Mine is the only one that has this sort of arrowhead nose to it. All the other K&Bs have a straight across, it's like a perfect triangle. And the eyes are a little bit different on mine. So I don't think it was used on screen, but it's definitely one of the originals.
They had K&B make molds and carvings and replicas. Just no matter what you did on camera, it didn't have that same value.
And I just didn't like the way it looked. And so when we came to the second day, when the mask really had to be revealed, I took the mask that we didn't own and I shot the entire day, just worried about, am I gonna get the studio sued and I'll lose my job and never work again, sort of thing. And at the end of that day, we got a call. We said we found, there's a little thing on the edge of the mask, if you look really close, it says Fun World. And we looked that up, and it's a mom and pop outfit up in New England.
They wanted to use the mask in a movie. And being just a simple country boy that I am, I said, okay, that's fine. Just be sure that you, in the credits, say Ghostface, courtesy of Fun World Easter Unlimited, our parent company, and send $100.
So there was scenes filmed with the original mask, and slowly we got a lot more, and we were able to work them into the movie, and that's what we see today.
That particular time, everybody was interested in just Scream, and I took off with it. I registered the name Ghostface, and to make sure that it was forever one and the same, I went back to the original copyright of this and amended it to where the description said Ghostface. So forever, the image and the name are one of the same. Is officially Ghostface.
You know, it's become our generation's Frankenstein and Dracula. Wes has created two of those. He created Freddy Krueger and now the Scream.
It's always reminded me of a ghost in pain. You know, you've never saw what a ghost looked like when it was in pain before, and that's what that mask has always reminded me of.
And boy, that thing is just so powerful. You know, it's one of the things where you say, well, why is that different from somebody really good like K&B did? That was kind of like it. It's just like, that's what art is. It's like somehow somebody got just perfectly right. Okay. And something very close to it is like,
Hello?
So when Bob came to me, Drew was attached to Star. She was to be Sidney Prescott. Bob called back and said, Drew has made a slight change. She doesn't want to star in the film anymore. I said,
Drew called and was like, I don't want to be Sydney. I have this great idea. I want to be Casey.
She's going to be the opening girl. And that's how it was known, just the opening girl.
The whole poster had Drew's face on it. So you're like, oh, it's a Drew Barrymore movie.
The fact that we killed America's sweetheart at the end of 15 minutes, it was like a body punch to the audience.
I have a box. It's called a phone box. So we have two phones hooked into it. Drew's cordless phone and a separate cordless phone for Ghostface. Everything's working fine. Nobody's thinking twice about it. There was a surge in the generator, and it blows my box. We were lucky that the house had two lines. We plug the phones into the house lines, and we start using the house lines. Then, at one scene, Drew needs to make phone calls, but she doesn't need anyone else on the other line. In fact, no one's supposed to be. It's the police. So she starts dialing 911, screaming, hang up, 911, screaming, hang up. Little do we know their phone, I didn't unplug the phone. She's calling the police. We're in the middle of a take and the phone starts ringing and we're like, what's going on? Why is the phone ringing? We pick it up and it's the police asking what the hell we're doing and why do we keep calling them?
As far as casting the role of Sidney Prescott, we were basically given carte blanche. We just saw every girl in town.
We screen tested Nev, Brittany Murphy, AJ Langer, and Alicia Witt.
We had great choices. It just really came down to just the subtle nuances of who really was Sidney Prescott. Nev Campbell just embodied the innocence, the freshness. She was just perfect.
And she's beautiful without being, you know, quote unquote Hollywood bombshell, big boobs. You know, she's not that. She's like this all-American kind of girl.
But she has these little, they're cute teeth. And they're not
beaver teeth or anything, but they're like a little bigger, and I think I used to say you have like cute little buckies.
The Craft was the first feature film I'd done in America. I'd been acting in Canada for 5 years before that, and then a professional dancer before that. And then Scream was the first lead I got.
She was remarkable. I mean, she's a consummate professional because she'd been in the business forever.
She does that really good. I'm running and scared, but yeah, she's badass face.
I put this up again. Sorry.
Fear and terror. You're like, oh no, don't hurt my little bucky.
And I think that that's why it's worked really well for Nev, because she does have that persona that's very calm, and which is also what Sidney Prescott kind of has. She deals with the situation she has to deal with, so I think it's very befitting of her own personality.
I think there's just something in Nev that she has an old soul, and I think Sydney, had a really tough life. Her mother was murdered. She came from a broken home. She knew a lot of horrible secrets about her mother.
She's more just someone who's vulnerable and eases into finding her own strength.
Sidney Prescott is the final girl. And the final girl is a term that comes from Carol Clover's book, Men, Women, and Chainsaws.
They aren't victims. These are women who fight back. And I think a lot of times these movies get underrated by people who don't understand that they actually are largely about it, the empowerment of women to face the bullshit men in their lives who try to fuck them over.
She's a big part of why the franchise has lasted so long. 5 years later, 10 years later, they're still coming back to her and saying, will you continue to carry it?
There was always the model and the mentality that we're making this movie for a price. And generally when that happens, you have the best luck with finding a fresh ensemble.
If I'm right about this, I could save a man's life. Do you know what that could do for my book sales?
There are characters like Gail Weathers in real life. I have seen many Gail Weathers that are just so anxious and they will do anything to get the story.
Courtney was definitely the most experienced. She'd been around for a while.
She was very well known because of Friends, obviously.
It becomes the issue of bringing somebody off television, so can they go into the movies? And it worked perfectly. She's a terrific Gail Weathers.
She got to play somebody really sharp and tough and screw somebody if she had to and stab them in the back or whatever it took to get where she wanted to get.
I think I stalked Courtney quite a bit on the first one. We stayed at this DoubleTree Inn in Santa Rosa that was overlooking the parking lot. So I'd be sitting there just going crazy, just waiting like some sicko. Then this limo would come down, and as soon as she'd get in the door, I'd go, bing, bing. She's like, hello? What are you doing? She's like, are you stalking me? I was like, exactly what I'm doing.
Did you really put her liver in the mailbox? Because I heard that they found her liver in the mailbox.
Several times in the casting, it was like, well, this isn't really who I had in mind, but this guy is really interesting.
When I had my final callback for Scream, it was like I saw Breckenmeyer and Jason Lee was there, and they're like, nice hair, and my hair was pink, and so I went in for like Wes and the producers and like, pink hair? And I was like, oh no, I'm done.
I just love him. He's got such an amazing comedy wit. In the first one, it really displayed it a lot. He really got to play around with like his voices and the characters, and it captured a really cool aspect of himself too.
This guy can be anybody. There's one point in Scream 2 where he suddenly starts talking in an English accent, and he just did that in the take, and it's so cool.
He and Matthew were a good team. They're like sideshow Bobs.
Do you think Sid would go out with me?
I remember Matthew Lillard, his girlfriend was a casting assistant and worked across the hall. And he happened to be visiting his girlfriend one day, and I walked in and I said, could you come in and audition, please? Because you look perfect for this movie I'm casting.
Originally, they brought me in for Skeet's part, Billy. And I was clearly not nearly handsome enough to be Nev's romantic interest at the time, so they moved me over quickly to Stu.
Matthew was just full of piss and vinegar and laughter, but he also is an actor of real depth.
How do we know you're not the killer?
Skeet Ulrich. I'll never forget that audition because I was reading the Sidney Prescott role while he was auditioning, and I thought, oh, wow, you're hot.
Skeet is the great-looking guy, kind of leader of the pack.
But the danger of him is that he's dangerous feeling.
He walks the fine line of both the charming rogue and the absolute psychopath.
Corn syrup. Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
He does so many subtle turns and twists and keeps you guessing right through to the end. Then once he reveals who he ultimately is, you are riveted to the insanity.
You're not scared, are you?
Well, when I first went in, they wanted me to look at the role of Billy or Stu. And I was a little old for it, but I could play younger. No, but I really liked the role of Dewey. It was written more of like a big muscle bound kind of lughead, and I saw something else in it. Plus, I got to kiss Courtney Cox, and I wanted to do that desperately.
He is, in a way, Dewey. I mean, he's not clueless like Dewey, but he has that innocence and openness, and just what you see is what you get.
On the script, he also died at the end, and it was a decision that the character was going to be so loved, he felt, that they should stuff him in the ambulance at the end, not dead.
Well, I learned that Dewey had a possibility of staying alive when we shot the final scene. So I came out on the stretcher and I was dead. And then Wes did a second take and said, you know what, just kind of give a nod or something, shows that you're still alive. At the premiere, I said, you know, he lived. It's like, I did. It's great.
Please don't kill me, Mr. Ghostface. I want to be in the sequel.
My character was Tatum Riley, and she was just the girl that I never was. So she was just this foreign, probably dates the football player kind of got character. But she was so funny, and I thought there was just a lot of heart to her, which I wanted to bring to the role. Went in, I heard they had cast Neve. The way Hollywood is, two brunettes are not allowed to be in the same film. That's just a fact. So Kathy Conrad, the producer, has blonde hair. I said, Kathy, who's your colorist? I'm gonna make my hair blonde. And you could see their eyes just kind of going, oh, we can make her blonde.
Cotton Weary is currently awaiting appeal for the death sentence.
I'd done a movie for Dimension called Phantoms, and Bob Weinstein called me into his office and said, would you do me a favor and do this walk-on in this movie? All I had to do was get out of a car and walk up a flight.
I think it's working. I think it's working.
Easiest jobs I'd ever done.
Quick cut!
It was fun doing the scene where I punched Courtney. We all knew that the audience would be into it.
The only thing I vividly remember is Wes is telling me, you've got to catch her. The first take, because I got the camera and I got to catch her. Well, I go to catch her, and the thing I catch is her left tit. All I can remember is, oh my God, I'm groping her boob. Oh my God, I can't let go. I can't let go. I've got to, if I don't go, she's going to fall. Here's the big TV star, and I'm nobody. I'm her sidekick, and the first thing I do is cop a feel.
When you cast for a voice, you get sent a million cassettes. Every guy can do 45 voices. So after a while, it's like, wow, wow. And then suddenly you hear Rogers, and it's like, well, just that voice is chilling.
Well, I've gotten letters from people who say, Dear Mr. Jackson, I really like your voice in these movies. Can you tell me where I can get one of those voice boxes you use? Of course, there being no voice box, it's me.
I made a policy of the actresses or actors never seeing him. Typically in Hollywood, it'd be the guy would be standing behind camera giving the other lines. He would be someplace quite distant on a real telephone talking to them.
When I'm working, I have a monitor there, so I can see through the camera's POV, though they can't see me, of course.
He was only ever a voice to me, and Wes wanted that to help all the actors with their fear.
It kept it real in a way.
Oh yeah, I love horror movies. With the mask and the costume, Ghostface is almost like a drawing that could come from any child's nightmare.
When they put that thing on, they get stronger. Throwing stuff and furniture, and I was like, wait a minute, who is that? Like, is that a WWF wrestler? Who is behind the mask? Is it just somebody's big cousin?
After wearing prosthetics, like I've worn prosthetics to be either an alien or a monster or whatever, it seemed kind of low-tech to me, It was a little difficult to see at times. How I remember us coming to wiping the blade off is we shot out a sequence and we were rehearsing the scene, and the scene I was ending up with a bloody knife. I just mentioned it. I said, hey, it's a direct cut to me running through the hall with a clean knife. Wes just thought for 2 seconds. He said, well, wipe the knife off on camera.
We landed in Santa Rosa. It offered a lot of everything that we were looking for, and it was a great staging space to get to Heidelberg and several of the other locations that we filmed at. There was a really beautiful old school.
We had got approval from the school, Santa Rosa High School, to shoot there.
While there was some discussion at the high school site, the school board really didn't know the level of discussion that was taking place. The board had questions about what was this film about.
When I first saw the script, there was no question it was going to be at some level of beyond the normal scope of business.
There was an influence in this community that was a bit shaded by the Polly Klaus murder.
The board was concerned about the level of graphic violence that was taking place in the film.
One parent heard about it, another parent heard about it, and people started getting very upset. And they had a town meeting, literally with 1,000 people, with everybody standing up and giving their opinion as to whether or not we should or shouldn't shoot there.
People were very concerned about violence against kids. And this movie, part and parcel, promotes and talks about violence in kids.
We teachers, we very much were intrigued by the idea of the film being here. Mostly because the principal, we heard the principal was killed in the film.
And it became a little bit of a witch hunt, it felt like.
And finally they decided, you cannot shoot here.
We were the unwanted stepchild, and we kind of relished in that. You know, we're so bad, they don't want us at the school.
It was ultimately decided by the board that the disruption was just too significant to the general running of the operation of the school. And that's where we made our decision.
Luckily, we found the school, and we had a great production designer, Bruce Miller, and we made it work.
After we shot the first weeks of shooting the Drew Barrymore sequence, he called me up on the Monday of the second week. And, you know, you're never sure about your career. I hadn't had a hit in quite a while. Wes, I just want to tell you, nobody else will tell you this, but your dailies suck.
I got the phone call saying, you know, that mask is not scary, that mask is kind of a joke, and it was a directive from Bob, that we pull out all the masks that we had been looking at, which there was we had 8 or so on the pop trucks. And we shoot the scenes that we were filming with a different mask each time until they were satisfied with what mask it was.
My guts were like in a knot for the whole second week.
I said, I have a plan. You let us finish this sequence, because we can shoot everything in this sequence. And we're going to cut it together for you, and we're going to send it to you. And if you think it's terrible, you can take over this movie, you can fire Wes, you can fire us all.
Wes was cutting during the day with his editor. So, you know, here this poor guy's working all night long and then going and sitting with his editor all day to basically save his job and save the movie.
Then we conformed it on film and sent the 13 minutes off to Bob Weinstein in New York to have a look at it.
The following Monday, the Monday of the third week, I get this call and said, Wes, I like the way you're done. It's fantastic. I'm Keith DeCon. What the fuck do I know about dailies? Thanks, bye.
Maybe your mom was just a very unhappy woman.
Well, you know, I've said to myself from time to time in my long career is, you know, a lot of the films that you made that really become Hallmark films are built around family. You know, The Hills of Eyes, Last House on the Left, Nightmare on Elm Street. And, you know, I didn't have anything to do with the writing of Scream 1. It came to me completely finished, but I think Kevin realized the same thing. Because a lot of this story is built around the kind of soap opera of Sidney Prescott's mother and what she was really up to.
That woman was a slutbag whore who flashed her shit all over town like she was Sharon Stone or something.
Poor Sidney was clueless, involved with Cotton Weary and Billy's father and all this stuff that is all kind of those very interesting, powerful family secrets that parents keep from their children. If you hide important facts from your children as a parent, it somehow corrodes the experience because there are places that you'll just instinctively not go with them and they'll never get to know really who you were in entirety. So if you're doing a story about that stuff, you're 5 steps ahead of a story that's just about a bunch of kids going out in the forest.
Hey, maybe Chris.
Or anything else.
Oh, thanks.
I love Henry Winkler.
He had never seen a horror film and he was fascinated by it and he just came out and I think he did most of what he
The real
did.
challenge and struggle is the fabric, right? It's
He happened to have a pair of scissors and was telling the kid what a punk he was for, you know, and he had the scissors up to the kid's throat, which is totally unscripted. The kid's going, ah!
Those scissors were pretty sharp, pretty capable.
The look he had in his eye, the kid was convinced he was going to have his throat clipped off.
Don't just cut. Cut with attitude. There was a moment when I was being stabbed and Wes yelled cut and he whispered to me, he said, do you think it hurts? I said, yeah, I do. He said, do you think it's excruciating when you're stabbed? I go, I guess so. I've never been stabbed, but okay, I'm going to say
okay.
yes.
Let's see.
He said, do you think
ELFSAR, I hope you like ice cream.
Whoa.
You got one.
Analog.
ELFSAR, I
Dude.
hope you like ice cream because you got one.
Thank you, man.
ELFSAR, I hope you like ice cream.
Thank you for showing some love. Appreciate that.
We had
Hope you're well, man.
Elsa, I hope you like ice cream, because you got one. Elsa, I hope you like ice cream, because you got one.
Real garage door, and so they had to nail me in because I was small enough that I was falling through. And so I went.
This is my
like 20 times.
my bonus Halloween art stream. It's November 1st. It's the furthest day from Halloween, right? And yet the closest as well. Happy Wednesday.
But at least I got him with the beer bottle.
You got a low blow in one time. That was pretty funny.
I'm a good shot, but throwing, not so much. And they were all real beer bottles.
All right, we got this kind of fabric going here.
I think I hit him, and then the second one, they put a big red X right next to the
I'm just trying to.
and instead I threw it right into the lens.
I was on the roof. My ankle was tied to the luggage rack. That was it. The stunt woman that was the driver, we had not marked through at half speed.
We're gonna have some underlight coming as well, but
The camera fell over in the van, fell back.
Trying to figure
and
out.
went off the roof. I remember grabbing the windshield wiper blade with my right hand. I went off the front of the fucking van, literally.
Everybody dies, but us, we're gonna carry on.
Lights hitting here.
That scene, especially, doing Billy and Sid in the kitchen.
Almost need to brighten this up a bit here.
Courtney, it was like endless.
It was physically very challenging. I had a lot of fight sequences. Emotionally, it was very challenging, I think, because Sydney's going through so much at that point.
One of the great things that Wes gave us is he gave us a freedom to find things in the moment.
A lot of their key scenes, the scenes in the kitchen when they have to stab each other and everything. I'd say 90% are lines written and 10% are things that they just worked up together.
Like as the fabric bunches up, it would get highlights would shine brighter.
These little improv moments came out of because he hit me with the phone. It slipped out of his hands because it was bloody.
They had this tremendous chemistry together that really worked.
Because Wes was given free reign, and Kevin wasn't like, "This is my words. This is the way it's gonna be." There was this little place for magic to kind of be created.
The hardest thing I ever did was learning how to wear duct tape and hop around for 6 hours. What was really neat about it was watching them do the violence
where's
over
that
and over and over.
purple?
As an actor, you get into this place and the energy it takes. And I distinctly remember sitting in a corner just being exhausted. And that gelatin is like sticky. So your blood all over your hands. And I just would sit there for like an hour and just play with this blood to stick. And you'd see the three of us were in separate corners.
I broke my freaking nib.
Just doing nothing.
Those guys at the end, they were just covered with blood. They were just caked with it.
The actors increasingly were in these bloody clothes that they never could change because you could never figure out the continuity. You could never take a bloody shirt, for instance, and then have another shirt exactly right. So you just use the same shirt over and over again.
Poor Matthew, who had more blood than Skeet did, and just was like, okay, here we
I think
go
this
over the poor guy.
this pencil's
When we
F.
finally finished that, the actors told me that they took all of their wardrobe out in a field and burned it.
There was blood all over the place, and that was that.
We were all staying in the hotel, in a little motel, the whole crew and cast. And we were just having a great time. I think we kind of couldn't believe we were getting paid to have fun like that.
We weren't filming, and we were bored in the town we're in. There was really nothing to do. We decided to get in the car and go, find something to do. And then all of a sudden we saw all these
Sharpen the other end.
people like hanging out.
Yeah, no, I think it's more of a case of like the pencil was dropped on the floor and it's all broken inside.
To end up at like the Radisson Hotel.
Which happens.
Prom parties. So that's what we did.
There's one crazy story where I put on Gail's costume, and I put a flasher's trench coat on. I ran into set and started flashing everybody. That was creepy.
We worked nights for like weeks on end, and you'd come back to the hotel, and we'd set up a bar.
One night, there was a good amount of
Yep.
going on. Like Skeets with his chick, and Courtney and David are looking lovingly, and Matthew, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, I turn, and I'm just looking at Earl. W. Earl Brown. He's like,
Purple
me and you,
underlight.
buddy. Me and you. That's right, boy.
I was the annoying little brother along for the ride.
And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm going to hook up with Earl.
Scream is actually the first horror movie I'd ever seen, and Wes asked me to come in, and he showed me that scene where Drew Barrymore gets killed, and he said, all right, well, why don't you take this home and
write the music for it and bring it back Monday morning, and let's see what you got. And that basically started my career. With Sydney's theme, I thought it might be neat to use a female voice to identify with her character. And so behind that, I have sort of a bed of whistling. I think that provides sort of...
Yeah, I've colored coloring books. They're fun.
The background of that.
I like also changing the drawing with the coloring.
Essentially, it only had like 60 minutes of scoring it. The second one had like 85, and the third one...
I don't have kids. But,
the MPAA on Scream 1 9 times trying to get it on.
and my
Getting an NC-17.
You're dealing with
my dog's not gonna
It's not about
really care about coloring books other than ripping them up. So
shocking and getting into personal things. You're just fair game.
but it's fun to take a children's coloring book and make it completely different.
And the mind kind of wants them to be dealt with, where they know they'll actually be safe, but it'll seem like they're about to be involved in something really horrible.
The key scenes were Drew Barrymore hanging in the tree. We high sped the shot in order to pound through it even faster, because the slower version, you really hung on the horror of the moment. No pun intended.
The reason why I'm using a purple on this is I want reflective light from the environment on the fabric, right?
The ones that suffer, I think, are in the finale with Billy and Stu when they.
That's how you place an object in a space, is have the light that from that space reflect on the object.
Stab each other, and it is horrific. I think it has a lot more impact.
You never get a name, you never know who is seeing your film.
Oh, nice.
It's a different group each time. So it's quite horrible to deal with.
The other thing the MPA went after and ultimately didn't win on was one line of dialogue.
Movies don't create psychos. Movies make psychos for creative.
It's just like, well, you're the MPA.
Hey, Cobert, how you doing? Good to see ya.
I was writing all these long letters. First Amendment, this is art, this is expression, blah, 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 blah. At the very end, when we were totally desperate, Bob Weinstein, the head of the studio, makes a call, comes back, and says,
The muddiness of the mask is...
convinced him it was a comedy.
At first I wasn't sure about it, but I think I actually like it now.
I said, really? Yeah, I told him it was all satire.
It wasn't until the end of the film that they started talking about changing the title.
And what Bob so cleverly constructed in his kind of marketing notion.
Hey, Out of Touch, how you doing? Yeah, I'm sorry, man. I've been super busy. I've been overworked a little bit. I hadn't had a lot of time to hit streams. But good to see you, man.
Small amount of crew and the cast, and they gave these out to everybody. The movie was then called Scary Movie. So I have my Scary Movie bottle especially for cast and crew.
I appreciate it.
I have my wine bottle still with the wine in it. I remember
This is another giveaway today.
especially because then they changed it to Scream.
This was another stroke of genius on the part of Bob Weinstein.
Okay.
Traditionally for decades.
Building this up here.
Period. Maybe an action film. And Bob.
Do we put blood on the knife or do we not put blood on the knife?
And I know Variety did an article about a month before we came out and called us DOA. We're coming out against Beavis and Butthead in one fine day.
Or we could hint the blood. We could just be very subtle. Let's not be over the top with it this time. I've been doing so much blood on drawings this whole freaking Halloween. Maybe we need to... Welcome back. Everyone's like, yes, blood, yes, blood. Everyone wants blood.
Okay, nobody ever opens on.
Think what I want to do.
Horror film, but what does the horror audience do? They're probably, bored stiff. So let's give them a film.
I do remember being at the premiere. I remember the next day there was a picture of Wes and I. And
Just have.
And they had interviewed some fortune teller lady that was at the party. I guess just hired to whatever. Pretty cool fortune teller.
I need a brighter.
Think this movie will do?
Not super bright. I don't want scarlet blood.
Maybe it will make no money and go poof. And I remember, I've always thought like, ha ha, sucker.
Let's follow. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna follow the motion of the arm. The arm just swiped, right? Like it looks like he just took a slash. So I'm thinking we add a little bit of
The kind of thing that didn't
motion.
weekend and just went away.
We thought if it made like 30 million, it would be amazing and it would be like last forever as like a cool movie. Did we know it was gonna be a touchstone?
Just how the blood is
I actually remember the actors we were all talking. We were
kind of
saying,
coming upwards.
Halloween costume, and now every Halloween, kids come to my door in the scream mask, which is fun.
Chris is not listening to me today. Let me grab.
Had to follow the twist.
When in doubt,
You had to be
go
trying
with
to stay.
the expensive Copic markers.
The only thing was Kevin and Wes were staying 10 steps ahead of that, and that's what made it so much fun to watch.
It was the first time I remember ever screaming out loud in a theater. Matthew Perry was sitting like 3 seats away from me, and I was mortified at my exclamation at such a high volume as only a 13-year-old girl can scream.
The greatest thing about, once you start working with him is watching Wes watch his own movie. Because he gets such a kick out of scaring the audience.
Oh, Twitch?
You could just totally see a little devious child in him.
I think Wes reinvents himself, keeps his
The one thing can be said about YouTube is that discoverability is
intelligent and creative man.
A tier,
Simply
S
knows
class.
what he's doing, and he's good at it.
It would be hard to make Scream today because it's a taking a chance.
Our movie, which never happens today, went into theaters in December and was still in theaters in May.
Scream opened the floodgates to full-blown slashing.
It's weird. The copyright system on Twitch is different than YouTube. Stuff gets flagged on Twitch that doesn't get flagged on YouTube.
But it was a great
to horror fans. It's a completely different system.
Hot again. I mean, that was the rebirth of teenage horror, and just like in the 80s, just like Halloween was, it was the birth of a lot of sub-horror movies.
Are you suggesting that someone's trying to make a real-life sequel?
Stab 2? Who'd want to do that? Sequels suck.
Like me, I'm not monetized, right? I'm not monetized at all. So these streams here, I don't, it doesn't matter to me that there's borrowed material.
We were still in theaters when we were in prep for the second one.
In this one, it was following the same character, maturing before the audience's eyes, because Ned was very young when she did the first one.
We got more money to make it. We had Kevin Williamson. We had the same actors.
I was actually signed on to the second one already.
We are getting close though, guys. We are getting close to 500 and we are getting close to our 3,000 watch time hours. Most importantly, I think I'm like 500 hours off. So hey, if you ever want to put a playlist on in the background, I've got plenty of playlists for you guys to play. If you want to cover your iPad at night and just let it play all night. I'm joking.
And there's a pressure on the second one to be as good as the first one. There's a pressure on Kevin to write a script as smart and genius as that, which is probably why the old adage of sequels suck is true, because
All right, here we go.
with this kind of thing that gets laden with everybody.
I think we have.
on it, and it doesn't get
Should we do more dramatic shadows? It's a bit muddy. It's a bit muddy.
Brilliant idea based on Sidney Prescott's life. So all of Sidney.
Yeah, it's the 3,000 hours, which was a real pain. But I believe it or not, it's actually it's getting really close, like really close.
Character, just because somebody's saying it is not necessarily true. Just because this reporter just has, run with this story is
That's just gonna.
not the truth.
And then Kevin has, I think something like 30.
Yeah, it's a subscribers. I'm not too worried about. It's the watch time hours. That's gonna be the biggest hurdle.
All you little fuckers out there that think that's ridiculous.
Just got to keep, because as hours add on, they get dropped off. It's within a year, 365 days.
It's not good, but there's really nothing you can do about it.
I think I just moved to LA months before I got
Okay, let me see. How do I do this?
I think it was my last audition.
I think
I was
we use
going
it
in for,
gray.
and they're like, "Okay, we're gonna send you the script, and you just need to bring it back in an hour."
Is that brown?
Finish with the script.
No.
So really, they
What is this? This is a
my home.
steel.
Hour
Oh,
later,
steel. I don't want
somebody
metallic.
knocked, on the door to get it back.
So scripts came out and it had this brown swath. It was actually some paper from the tobacco industry to camouflage.
Got to take a different approach.
You couldn't highlight it. You couldn't mark it. So we had to sit there. You had to specially hold it up to read it in the light. And they held out the end.
I wasn't going to sell them. The secret's safe with me, especially if it had to do with Wes Craven.
That script went through a lot of changes, and I can remember writing sessions when Kevin was already off working on his television show at the time, where we would have 6 people in a room trying to brain check each other because you get a plot line worked out for, say, the second half of the.
Mystic always had a hard time with Watchstars. Yeah, it is the hardest. It's weird because like a small video can do really, really well and provide a lot of hours, and a longer video can just do poorly, right?
Kevin was.
The one thing I can say is that the art streams tend to, when somebody's watching an art stream, they tend to stay a while, which is nice. So that definitely adds up. Live streaming actually is probably the easiest way to get your watch time hours up. And in fact, if you put together a music playlist, that's awesome because people will just play it, right, and then do other things.
Go in and out of the Stab movie and then the Real movie with Jada Pinkett and Omar Epps. It was a real challenge to decide when you were going to go full frame with the Heather Graham moments.
Okay, let's see.
Wes's real tour de force of his commentary on the success of the first film.
It was kind of sad to see Omar go so fast. And so brutal, like, right through the ear, They always have cool opening sequences, but that was the kind of craziest part of the beginning of that.
Is that too subtle? I don't know. There's a bit of purples in there.
The interesting thing about
And then I kind of need more of a chromatic blue on the thing.
through the second too. I think in the first movie she is a typical final girl. She's thrust into this horrible situation. Her friends are being murdered. She is the one who's smart enough and resourceful enough.
Yeah, the thing I want YouTube to do, like desperately, I want YouTube to separate shorts from videos in the upload creative tab. I want to have shorts in its own category, much like live streams are. Because damn it, it is so difficult to like sort the videos when there's all the shorts there, right? Like it needs its own tab.
So much that the sins of
Aw.
murder are being visited on Sydney as it is that the sins committed against her mother are being carried.
Blade's too close to my hand. Aha, funny.
Oh, Sydney, share with us, please. Oh, did you get that on film? Yes, I got that on film. Everybody's just like, oh my God. I'm like, did you get that on film? And I ad-libbed that, And I was mad at Dwayne that day because he said it right after me, trying to steal my shine. And like, why are you gonna repeat it? Then they wanted it. So I was like, man, I came up with that.
Oh man, my stream does not show the detail that I piss me off.
Get the girl. Well, I gave him a goatee, but I only gave him half of one because at the time grunge was big, so I thought he was like influenced by that. At that time, horror movies were like people were being slaughtered and their heads cut off, and people were like, "So, what are you doing for the weekend?" And it's just like,
Oh, what you're saying? What is it? Short form videos are king.
Like he got a little darker, he's a little edgier. I just wanted him to evolve. I don't know how much. I mean, he still didn't really have any sex.
Miss Prescott and I have a very complicated past.
Oh, I don't know. Cotton Weary, grew. I mean, he was just a throwaway character in the first film. We never thought we'd see Lev again, and yet found a way to bring him back in a really interesting way.
Even though I'm only in the first film for something like 30 seconds,
Yeah.
It takes a long time to shoot those things, and you're sort of living there with those people. So we had already had a rapport by the time we worked on screen too.
I'm trying to be better at it. I mean, life has kind of thrown a couple wrinkles in my way, but I want to do more. I feel good about creating videos. Like I like creating videos. I think it's because I need a shadow here.